I'd like to call the meeting to order. Thank you, everyone, for coming today. We have a few items on the agenda today. We're going to be discussing the Comcast settlement. Then we'll have a presentation on ambulance capacity. Before we get started with those presentations, we'll now begin our public comment on the fiscal year 18 proposed budget. Those wishing to speak during public comment must have submitted a completed request to speak form to staff at the room entrance prior to the beginning of the public comment period. Please preface your statement with your name, city of residence, and for Eugene residents, your ward if known. You'll have 3 minutes to comment. There are lights on the timer. The yellow light indicates that you have 30 seconds remaining, and a sound will indicate the end of 3 minutes. And our first public comment will come from Michael Kerrigan. You want to come up?
I request to come last, if that's possible. That should have been at the end.
Oh, okay. We took them out of order.
All right.
Lost the order.
We lost our order.
Yeah.
We get to, okay. I'll just go in reverse. Perfect.
All right.
Okay, we have Michael Caven.
Wait till you see 70 sometime.
Michael Caven, the president of Lane Professional Firefighters Association, located here in Eugene. I'm here representing the 250 men and women of Eugene Springfield Fire. I'd like to thank this committee for recognizing the concern for ambulance capacity in our city. Your attention to this matter is critical to the health and safety of our community. To put it simply, we do not have enough resources to safely and expeditiously complete our mission providing emergency ambulance transport. I can frame this issue with a few simple facts. 15 years ago, in FY 2002, the city deployed 4 24-hour ALS ambulances, responding to an average of approximately 3,300 calls per ambulance. For the last 14 years, the city has operated with 3 24-hour ALS ambulances, and in 2016, these 3 ambulances were responsible for an average of 5,500 calls each. Each of our 3 ambulances is responsible for over 2,000 additional calls on an annual basis, or a 65% increase in demand. The following communities are half the size of the city of Eugene or smaller and deploy the same number of 24-hour ALS ambulances: Albany, Bend, Corvallis, and Springfield. Our deficient response capacity can be seen in a reliance on neighboring jurisdictions to cover our calls in the city, most notably the city of Springfield, whose 3 ambulances responded into the city of Eugene for over 30% of their calls in 2016. Our firefighters have worked collaboratively to try and solve this problem over the years. The most recent venture where the IFF Local 851 proposed and sacrificed union wages to fund a BLS pilot program with non-union employees. You'll likely hear more about this program from fire management tonight. What I want this body to understand, this BLS pilot program would not have started had the union not offered up wages from its members to fund it. We have to change the narrative that the city will not add transport resources if they don't generate additional revenue. The city has a responsibility to its citizens to appropriately fund and deploy essential public safety resources, and that includes transport ambulances. The fact that these ambulances, staffed with firefighters, are responsible for supplementing fire response due to a lack of standard staffing on fire apparatus is reason enough to justify general fund support. I question how we can prepare for the tens of thousands of additional people in our community for 2021 or the increase in population with Envision Eugene if we cannot meet the service demand on any given day right now. I thank you for your time and commitment to addressing the capacity issues of this necessary and valuable service. Thank you.
Next, we have Kelly Johnson.
My name is Kelly Johnson. I live in Eugene in Ward 4, and I am the Development Director at Shelter Care. I am here tonight on behalf of my agency, our community partners, and the people we serve. I'd like to advocate for adequate funding for the basic needs services for our community. The city's contribution is essential to support the growing demand on our community's basic needs safety net. We encourage you to return to funding levels that are adequate to meet this demand. Supporting our community's vulnerable populations is a critical component for building a thriving community for all. We are deeply grateful for your past support and hope for a continued partnership. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Bob Cassidy?
Bob Cassidy, 1401 East 27th in Ellen Zelenka's ward. I was startled when I read the manager's budget that we were to be saving $800,000 in the budget by not adjusting the services and materials budget by a cost of living. I thought this meant that the workforce was not going to get an annual cost of living adjustment. I was told this was not so. I hope that's true. My concern was our low-paid city employees. About a year and a half ago, we petitioned this council to raise the minimum wage to employees from the state minimum to $15 an hour, plus an annual cost of living adjustment. This type of policy was initiated by the city of Corvallis back in 2002. We have over 700 employees currently getting less than $15 an hour. They're in a category of employees called temporary workers. This is so even though some of them have worked for the city over 20 years. Some are part-time, some are full-time. These are the people that deliver the city services to us. They represent us to the city business community as jobs we say are good jobs. The type of jobs we would like to promote in the community. But these are poverty wages, or so says the federal government, because some of these people are working at wages that qualify for food stamps. That is a poverty wage. I don't know how many of our city employees are on food stamps, and I don't think you do either. It's not something we can be proud of. I don't think we should provide a city service if we can't afford to pay a decent wage to the people who do the work. I felt the same way when I ran a deli in the city and did pay better than the market rates and worked for getting the state rates higher. That I wanted that so that others would have to pay a higher wage. That was back in 1992. That policy proved very good for my business. It improved tremendously. I do not think we should build a new city hall on the backs of low-paid city employees. The White House was built by slave labor. I'm not proud of that history. I think at least the annual cost of living for those under $15 an hour would be higher than the rest of the staff. The goal should be to pay a wage that is above the federal poverty wage. That kind of thing is a policy, employees' policy that the city council would handle, not the budget committee. But the budget committee could talk about it because it does affect the budget. Thank you.
Next, we have Jennifer Frenzer Knowlton.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Frenzer Knowlton. I'm in Betty Taylor's ward, and I wish we could spend the money on sunshine because it would be great to have that in reserve, but that's not possible. So what I'm here to request is funds for various homelessness initiatives, including seed money for indoor shelter, as was discussed at the work session, and also something I think it would be terribly important is a day respite center and it being located downtown. And whether those funds are for refurbishing a current standing building that's accessible, or finding new property, I think it would be an excellent use of the funds that we're discussing. Some other items that I think would be important for the Budget Committee to recommend include the transition expenses for Nightingale Health Sanctuary. Right now, the health sanctuary has been turned into a car camp. And so for the transition, while they're doing that, while they have agreed to modify their model and use the car camp, I would like for their sanitation and other operating expenses to be taken up. And also funding for new rest stops that we could get rolling before the winter. So if new rest stop hosts knew that their first year expenses or half their first year expenses could be covered, we could incentivize people taking on the role of being a host and before this coming winter comes. And that might be a way to get more rest stops and more wards. And then finally, I'd like to see fees for consultation with Eric Tars, who's with the National Law Center on Homelessness and Poverty. And he could help us with a comprehensive strategy and a vision on alternatives to criminalization, getting the stakeholders to the table and getting a plan in place that could direct policy. So I think this would be another excellent use of the funds. Thank you.
Next, we have Lee DeVoe.
Hi. So I want to start by pointing out, as I think you all know, that currently hundreds of thousands of dollars are spent each year on law enforcement and medical costs related to homelessness and on cleaning up illegal homeless camps. Funding a shelter system would both reduce those costs and provide a way out of homelessness for many. So I'm asking you to consider including the following items in the 2018 city budget. So number one is using a portion of the Comcast settlement for seed money for the creation of a low barrier shelter for singles. Number two is providing funding for the establishment of day respite centers, and at least one of those centers having provision for laundry and shower facilities in addition to the service station, which already provides that, but is really maxed out. The third is providing funding for multiple day storage facilities. And the fourth is providing funding for an emergency shelter system, which includes expanding the rest stop program, making the dusk to dawn camping program year-round, and increasing the number of sites for the overnight parking program. And I spent some time reading over the budget today, which was like really unpleasant. And one of the things that I found is that there's money related to homelessness that's just like dispersed throughout. So that some of it, and some of it is really feels like diverting funds. So one of the things I came across is that for the overnight parking program, some of the funding goes to police responding to complaints about illegal car camping. Well, that's not really providing car camping. Those are police services, and they should come out of the police budget. So, you know, I can't figure out how those things are kind of meshed in there. Also, there is a reference in the park and urban space improvement section. There's a whole slew of items. One of them is providing day storage, but it doesn't say how much money is going to be spent on providing day storage, where it's going to be, how big it's going to be. I mean, there's just nothing specific in there. So I really think that we need to start addressing homelessness as homelessness, and giving it the kind of attention that our city deserves. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Cindy Cole.
Thank you. Yeah. Actually, I have, yeah.
Good evening. My name is Cindy Kohler, and I reside in Councillor Taylor's ward. And I come to you tonight representing AFSCME workers, Local 1724. It's approximately 640 employees here at the City of Eugene. So I've spoken in the past about the need for additional security and cleaning downtown, funded through the restoration of paid parking. Eliminating the parking meters was a great experiment, and it's time to acknowledge that it didn't quite meet the intended outcomes. That $250,000, approximately $250,000 in revenue, is needed to keep the downtown safe and clean. We need to restore those crews downtown who regularly cleaned and power washed our sidewalks, and also provided an extra set of eyes and ears in the early morning hours. It's long overdue. I also want to encourage the committee and council to reconsider the use of Comcast funds. We need to take care of what we have before we make huge investments in new things. The construction of City Hall has been in the active planning stages since I started with the city. That was almost 20 years ago. So perhaps it's time to pause for a moment and consider the community's expectations. And one of community's expectations would be to take care of our existing facilities. We currently have elevators in 3 parking garages that are unreliable and in need of repair and actually probably replacement at this point. And every year we defer that maintenance, we create a bigger ADA liability. The downtown library, this facility right here, also is in the same situation. We have the staff elevator and the customer elevator are not regularly reliable and could use some repairs as well. I've actually been trapped in the elevator. Unpleasant. We also need to invest in our ambulance services. Waiting 26 minutes for life-saving transport is ludicrous, and should a fatality occur, we would all own that. It's ridiculous that we don't have adequate service here in Eugene for our ambulance services. We need to invest in and take care of what we have. Please support applying funds or finding revenue for existing maintenance for facilities and our services. And thank you all so much for your time and volunteering your evening to be here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Finally, we have Michael Kerrigan.
Good evening. My name is Michael Kerrigan. I live in Ward 7, and thank you for letting me speak last. We need to do more to help the homeless in our community. I'm one of the founding board members of Opportunity Village Eugene. I'm on the steering committee for the Nightingale Health Sanctuary. Rest stops work. They're just doing a great job, but we need more. And I know that the fundraising for these is just hard work for a small nonprofit to go out there and raise the money. We could use some help from the budget committee to help pay for some of the things that we are going to need. And I know that I was involved in the homeless count with Lane County. So I applaud the rest stops. They're helping probably about 300 folks. We counted over 1,400 people in the homeless count. That's last year's number, probably the same this year. So there's a great need. And so having the budget committee devote some of the Comcast funds, it was mentioned that the low barrier shelter, that'd be great, because rest stops don't work for every person. Some folks need that shelter, but that's something we need help to raise the money to do that. And they also are, my colleagues mentioned a day center at Calc in Whitaker, where I live. We get people sleep on our porch, no place to store their stuff. It's just really, I want to do more and more for these folks who come on our porch, come in our backyard. I wish I could send them to a day center during the day or a place to store their stuff. So we need to do more in Eugene. What we've done with the rest stops with Opportunity Village Eugene has been an inspiration to the rest of the country. But I hope that it can inspire us to do more as well. So, and I thank you for giving me the chance to speak here tonight, and thanks for your ongoing hard work.
We'll now move to the minutes approval from the last 2 meetings, March 15th and 26th. In your packet, you have those minutes. Are there any recommended changes or discussion around those minutes? Motion for approval?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Motion's passed. All in favor. We'll move into our presentation on the Comcast settlement.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm here to give you just a little bit of background information before you head into your conversation about the use of Comcast dollars. I'm going to talk a little bit about Supplemental Budget 1, the FY18 proposed budget, and some of the policy and budget strategies that you might think about as you have your discussions. So Twyla gave you some background on the Comcast settlement last week when she presented the forecast. We made a settlement after many years with Comcast, and they gave us a check for $18.75 million in September of last year. Those revenues were received after our fiscal year 2016 was over, but because the settlement related to past time periods, those revenues were accrued back to 2016, and they were deposited into the general fund as an FY16 revenue. The Comcast right-of-way license fees are a general revenue source, kind of like property taxes, and so when we got the settlement check in, we put that check the same place we put the ongoing revenues from Comcast. Those revenues were not anticipated when we built the FY17 budget, so they became part of what we call marginal beginning working capital for FY17. Marginal beginning working capital is basically the unanticipated carryover funds from the prior year. So it's the difference between what we thought we would start the year with in carryover resources and what we actually started the year with after our auditors get done doing their work. The audit adjustments are always considered on the supplemental budget in December, and council would often dedicate one-time funding on that budget if there happened to be one-time resources available. So here's the balance in the reserve for revenue shortfall in the general fund for the current year. As a reminder, the reserve for revenue shortfall acts as kind of a savings account for the general fund. It's a one-time resource. Once it's spent, it's gone, and it doesn't come back unless the council makes a decision to put additional dollars back into that account. We started the FY17 budget with $6.5 million in that reserve, and then on supplemental budget number 1 in December, the $16.5 million was deposited from that Comcast settlement amount, and that's what increased the reserve balance to the current amount of $23.1 million. Council did a number of things on supplemental budget number 1. Most of the dollars that were allocated according to policy direction, either from the council or from the budget committee motions from last year, or put into the reserve for revenue shortfall. So that's the left-hand side of the slide. The right-hand side of the slide, there was some one-time spending, $1.7 million that were allocated on supplemental budget number 1. In your packet, Twyla gave you the full list. I broke them out a little bit differently here, but they were all one-time spending items. Some of them were one-time in FY17, and the FY18 proposed budget includes ongoing funding. Some of them were one-time in 17 and the proposed FY18 budget, and some of them were one-time in FY17 only. There are several items that were on the UNA list. Actually, most of the SB items were on the UNA list and need ongoing funding, but we did try to move some of those programs forward using some one-time dollars, which is what we have tried to do over the last several years, is move things forward in stages or implementing them as pilot projects and then eventually looking for ways to make those programs ongoing. So implementing these programs in stages allows us to make progress on these important community goals without making long-term funding commitments during periods where we're having fiscal constraints. So for the FY18 proposed budget, we have a few limited dollar spending items shown above. Some of those were SB1 items and are one time again in FY18. And the total of all of these items is about $1.1 million. And that relates to what happened to the reserve for revenue shortfall in 18. So the FY17 budget, currently we have $23.1 million in the reserve account. For FY18, that reserve is set at $21 million, which is a $2.1 million decrease. $1 million of that goes towards one-time funding items, which we just talked about on the previous slide. And then $1.1 million is basically moving dollars from the reserve for revenue shortfall into the unappropriated ending fund balance, or UEFB. You may recall that Council has set that UEFB level at 2 months of expenditures. It's a cash flow reserve. If we didn't have the UEFB, we would have to borrow money in order to pay our contractors, for materials, in order to pay our employees between July and November. So that $1.1 million isn't actual spending of money. It's basically moving from one kind of reserve to another kind of reserve. Here are some relevant financial policies that underlie the financial decisions around maintenance of the UEFB, around the allocation of those dollars that we might have available on supplemental budget number 1, and around the use of non-recurring revenues. And so all of the decisions on supplemental budget 1 and in the FY18 proposed budget basically are built on these financial policies. Those policies have been translated into what you see in the FY18 proposed budget strategy. The strategy that John and Twyla presented to you last week is to bridge the general fund gap that we are anticipating over the next 3 years. And that is really an essential part of the FY18 proposed budget, is that we are building this strategy over the next 3 years. The budget this year relies on $1 million of ongoing reductions in FY18. And then the rest of the strategy is that we would have another $1 million, an additional $1 million of ongoing reductions in FY19, and another $1 million of ongoing reductions in FY20, for a total of $3 million of ongoing reductions in the next 3 fiscal years. That should close the structural gap at least through FY21, but then we would face some additional large budget gaps again starting in FY22. So a really key part of this strategy is that we maintain a prudent reserve for revenue shortfall in the general fund during this time where we're having some fiscal imbalance. Keeping $9.5 million Comcast funds in the reserve for revenue shortfall will maintain that reserve balance at a prudent level through the next 6 fiscal years. That would leave about $7 million of other Comcast money that could be potentially directed for other uses. As you may recall, that the City Council passed a motion when they approved Supplemental Budget 1 that asked the Budget Committee to have a discussion about the use of Comcast dollars, which is why we're here today. And so when I think about it, the 2 questions really for you Budget Committee folks to consider are, 1, should the city keep $9.5 million of the Comcast in the revenue shortfall to make sure we maintain that prudent balance? And 2, what should happen with the remaining Comcast dollars?
Okay. Follow the same format as we did last week. We'll start from the right here. It's your chance to ask questions, make a comment, or pass. With the remaining time, we'll start the queue after everyone has had a chance to speak. Just a reminder, we won't be entertaining motions tonight, or we can signal those, but we won't be deliberating on those until the next 2 meetings. So, Ken?
Okay. I guess I have a couple of comments. In considering this and kind of thinking about it and watching it over the last number of months as these funds came in and there was discussion about it, and then looking at your questions, a couple of things occur to me. I'm a pretty strong proponent for the reserve funds being in place. I mean, I think I would answer that first question, yes, that it would be prudent for the city to keep this in reserve, especially given what the next several years look like. When I think of the next remaining dollars, it gets a little cloud here. I would say for myself as a budget committee member and also as a member of the community for a very long time, I'm finding myself less certain about a new city hall. I've watched it over time and thought about it a bit. I will say, working with city staff and kind of working on various things over the last year or two, I'm kind of, I find it kind of helpful that city staff is kind of distributed around the community. I sort of like that. Not that that's the best reason, but, and I think if I go there, when I look at the remaining funds, I think there's a number of things. I think in the area of human services, there are probably a substantial list of things you could come up with for use of one-time funds that the community could weigh in on. I found Cindy's comment about facilities. I know each time we sit through the capital budget plan, we hear the facilities people talk about facilities, and I think to the extent some of those dollars, there might be candidates out there for one-time expenditures on existing city facilities. I guess those would be kind of the areas where I might focus it, and I think you could, certainly come up with a number of candidates. So those are my comments.
I am interested to hear where the conversation goes and the degree to which it advises and informs the city council who makes the final policy on it. It is an absolute for me that one-time money is only spent on one-time things. I mean, if we approach this money as somehow subsidizing our ongoing obligation, then you simply use up the money and still have the obligation when you're done. So we need to come up with revenue sources to cover ongoing obligations, which we do have, and I fully support looking for ways to do that. So if we focus on those one-time expenditures where this money could be spent, including the reserve, the money's spent a couple of times over, which means we have to be very thoughtful about how we invest this money. And how we invest it needs to be based on a number of criteria, not just short-term gain or long-term gain or some fiscal preservation or projects that are flowing from the community. It needs to be a balance of all of those. And I think we can come up with a way to spend this money so it creates a balance of reasonable reserve, a balance of reasonable expenditure on things that are really necessary in the community, and I hear some of them tonight. But also some of the things that the council has already indicated a priority for, which is to replace City Hall. And some people can say, oh, well, I don't think we need it right now. I don't want to be part of a city that couch surfs its city government because we don't have a City Hall. And some folks may say, that's fine, we can go forever without a City Hall. We don't really need one. I'm sorry, we need one. It doesn't have to be a palace. It doesn't have to use all of this money to do it, but we need, if we've torn it down, we need to replace it, and we need to do it in the most fiscally responsible way we can. So I'm not asking to use all of that money to build a palatial City Hall, but I think if there is some use of that money, or at least some portion of that money, we should, as the City Council has indicated, it's a policy priority, use part of it, but not all of it. I think there are other things that deserve our capital attention, and I support looking at those things for our capital attention, which is why I'm interested in hearing what the Budget Committee has as ideas for what those kinds of expenditures might be.
Thank you. I definitely agree with keeping the $9.5 million in the reserve. I think that's a very prudent thing to do. I think it would be great to have a city hall down on the park blocks, but I think it would be great to do some of these other things. So I would be willing to maybe put $2 million towards the city hall, but I would feel extremely generous doing that. I'm much more interested in buying another ambulance or two, because I would rather stay alive than be able to go to City Hall. I definitely think we need to help our homeless. Plenty of ideas have been given, and some of those are certainly one-time expenditures. I also would like to continue revitalizing our downtown. So I agree with the money we've been putting out for the the programming and the cleaning, and so money that would be one time for rejuvenating downtown, I think would benefit a lot, rather than putting all of it into City Hall. And I also think fixing up some of our buildings, although we always need to be doing that, to rescue a building or 2 or 5 would be a one-time expense that would have a great benefit, better than having to start over building a building. I'm also really interested in hearing what other people have for ideas, but I'm not going to go for all of it for City Hall. I definitely think we need to put the parking meters back. The merchants downtown are desperate for them, and hey, if it's going to bring in revenue, awesome. Mm-hmm. And we can use that to pay the low-paid people a decent wage. Let's get real here. I am the lowest paid person in the city because I am new and I am putting in over 40 hours a week. That makes me paid way under minimum wage, but I do not want to have other people emulate my position. Thank you.
Amen, sister.
I think, just to echo a couple of the comments, I think that it doesn't have to be an either or with the funding of the reserve for the City Hall. I think we can talk about some smaller amount potentially and dividing that money amongst a lot of different areas. I agree that leaving $9.5 million in the reserve is a very prudent thing to do when looking towards the future potential for budget gaps. But I also think that what I still don't understand, and maybe others do, is what kind of burden not having a City Hall places on other public resources. And is there some potential savings or offset from centralizing some of those activities to a new City Hall? And does that offset some of the ongoing costs that might be incurred? And on that same vein, I really like the public comments tonight, and I think that when we're looking at investing in areas like homelessness, if there's a net benefit to the city and to the budget that can offset some of that initial investment and reap long-term rewards in terms of other public works and policing, I think that that's also a worthy discussion of those short-term investments leading to really some incredible long-term financial benefits and social benefits.
I see Glenn in the back of the room, and I only say his name out loud because he may need to come up here and answer this question. I don't know. Number one, as I understood the Comcast suit, we said, hey, you guys got to pay a fee for use of right away, and they said, no, we don't. They lost, and so that decision was effective back to X date that it first started, and I don't know what that date was. Can you help me? Here comes Glenn. See, just like that, right on cue.
I can't tell you the exact date. I believe it was early 2000, so 2003, 2004.
Right. And what's the annualized number for that they owe us?
So the number,
more or less,
well, a couple things. The number changed over time because it depended on how many subscribers there were to Comcast and how much revenue Comcast was actually earning off of it. Right. So I can't tell you what it would have been on average over that period. What I can tell you is we settled. There was a significant difference of opinion as to what we thought they owed and what they thought we owed.
But it looks like $1 million a year, more or less.
We are currently getting, I think, about $1 million a year. We'll be getting about $1 million a year.
Here's my question.
I just want to clarify the question. So the one-time money, are you equating to $1 million a year, or are you equating
for over the, from the beginning of the time period that the suit covers that we started until now? That was like what, 17 years ago? Is that what you just said?
We got a check for about $17 million, so you're equating about $1 million a year of that check to that.
Exactly correct.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, okay.
Here's my question: what's the number going forward?
We've built about $1 million a year into the general fund forecast going forward.
So one of the reasons, Mike, why those numbers may not seem right to you is a significant portion of the settlement was interest and penalties. So they owed us this much money.
Plus, you should have paid us, so you get to pay us a little more.
Interest and penalties was this much, and that's what we basically got.
It's an interesting discussion. And can you tell me the date of the judgment, please?
There would not have been a judgment because we wound up settling. So this case went from the Circuit Court to the Court of Appeals to the Supreme Court, Oregon Supreme Court. It was after they lost in the Oregon Supreme Court, if I'm remembering it right, that they finally said, okay, let's talk settlement.
Yeah. That was roughly when?
A year and a half ago, maybe.
Have we used any of the ongoing money for budgeting in previous budget years? In 17 or 18? No. But we did in 18 and in the moving forward. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Right, we built additional ongoing dollars starting in FY18.
This is just me, but because that's a new revenue source, I would have liked to have had a discussion about the use of that as well, rather than, because what we talk about all the time with regard to one-time monies as opposed to ongoing monies, we're right now discussing what should we do with the one-time money, which is the back payment. I would have liked to have had a discussion as well that said, what do we do with the ongoing money, rather than just apply it? And that's something we'll leave maybe for another time. But I just, that's a commentary on this process.
Yeah, so I think when we get the ongoing money, we build it into the budget. And so what you see is that $1 million has been absorbed by already existing costs that go up, whether they're PERS or contracts or anything else. Those expenses go up, and so the new Comcast money happens to be a new revenue source to help offset those costs. And it doesn't offset all the costs, obviously, because we have a $1 million
I don't disagree that our costs continually rise. What I'm saying is that as Chris just did a moment ago, there's an awful lot of point made when we have these discussions about the difference between one-time expenditures and ongoing expenditures. And when we have one-time monies, new unanticipated monies, we talk about how to spend them. I think that if we're going to have strict adherence to, a new ongoing expense needs to have a new ongoing revenue source. When we have unanticipated new revenue sources that are ongoing, we should talk about what's best to do with that, apply it to existing already made commitments, or whether there's something else we should be doing with that. It's just my commentary. Secondly, to the question number one, yes, for now, but I reserve the right to change my mind later, because the reserve for revenue shortfall has always been something with which we gauge the importance of emergencies we don't plan on. Number two, we could be spending what's left for any number of other important things like the homeless shelter that's been discussed, any number of things, because we can spend the $18 million that we already have aside for City Hall by buying eWeb, and it'll be plenty of money to have left over, plus the money for selling the other place in order to refurb it, and we can spend this on something else. Thank you.
Josh.
All right. Thank you. Thank you to the people who spoke in public comment. I appreciate you taking the time to do that. We don't really have time built into comment in detail, but some of this will overlap. I guess I'm feeling some tension. I agree with many of the points that have been made, but I'm feeling some tension that hasn't yet been brought up, and that is between this windfall now and long-term structural deficits that we're looking toward. I appreciate what Sue laid out regarding cuts in the next 3 fiscal years. That obviously makes sense. But I'm curious if staff and the city manager or committee members and counselors can offer a framework for thinking about the fact that we happen to have some one-time money now, but we might have not just changes in ongoing expenses, but very difficult transition given the magnitude of the increase in PERS costs coming up not that far off. It's far enough off that it feels like a different set of budget questions, but given the magnitude of this one-time money and given the, fact that it's not that far in the distance that PERS rates start to go up steeply, I'm curious if people can comment on that. So I'll leave that sitting there. I enjoy hearing one-time money for one-time purposes over and over again, but I'm hoping that we can make it less a mantra and more just a distinction. In a number of items that we see before us, we see a one-time element and we see an ongoing element. That's true certainly for the ambulance funding that we've talked about, whether we're considering additional basic life support ambulances or additional advanced life support ambulances. That distinction is made both in the unfunded needs assessment and in things that have come before the committee, and I'm sure we'll talk about that later. But I would just encourage people to think about that. If that's a bad idea in the view of the city manager or staff, please let us know. But in the proposal that I made for an open budget website, some sort of transparency tool, I tried to draw that distinction as well. And then last point, also on the unfunded needs assessment, this won't sound directly related to Comcast, but it starts where some things that Sean said and some other people have said. A couple of years ago when we were talking about the multi-year financial plan, I said, hey, it would be really helpful for us to see not just one-time costs and ongoing costs, but the full budget implications for the general fund. So many of the items in the unfunded needs assessment, like in the MYFP before it, have good budget implications. Either they reduce future maintenance costs substantially, or they reduce operating costs, or they increase revenue to the city. Without that picture, it's very difficult, I think, for us to have a conversation like this that involves so much of the future with these unfunded needs sitting nearby as well.
Thanks, Josh. John.
I understand the rationale and don't disagree with the logic of utilizing available cash for the City Hall project rather than completely financing it and pay the additional interest. However, when you secure the funding for any project, the conversation very quickly turns away from whether or not we should be spending the money and instead becomes of, okay, well, how are we going to spend it? Based upon the feedback that I've heard from members of the community and in this group about the City Hall project, I don't feel that the discussions on how to proceed with the building of a new City Hall, either in the discussions of its location or size, or even whether purchasing the eWeb headquarters might not be a more viable and cost-effective plan, I don't believe that these have been sufficiently completed. And I certainly don't believe that there's been nearly enough community buy-in for us to be securing any funding at this time. This is especially relevant because we're forecasting a $3 million budget deficit in fiscal year 22, just a couple years out, and I'm fairly certain that the conversation at that time is going to be revolving around cuts to services rather than whether or not we can be transferring the money back out of the City Hall fund to pay for our budget gap. Once we set it over there for that City Hall, we're never going to see it again except for a City Hall. If we resolve the forecasted budget deficits and we have a clear direction with widespread community support, I could get behind a transfer as it's suggested, but at this time, I cannot. I cannot support transferring any money to a City Hall project because I don't think it would be financially responsible until we've taken the necessary steps first.
I think that when I heard about the one-time money, I immediately thought that's the solution for City Hall. And I think there's no better use for it. That is a one-time thing. We have, council in general, neglected the old City Hall for a long time and then destroyed it, but I think a city should have a City Hall. So I think of two things that would be good for one-time money: the City Hall and homeless shelter downtown with rooms and a gathering place. And one reason we need a gathering place is because of the library, which should not be the gathering place for people just to come in and get warm. I know we have many needs, ongoing needs, and we need new sources of revenue. That's something I wish we were thinking more about. For example, a part of a hotel tax for the general fund, since people who come here from other places do use our facilities, and they would be helping pay for some of them through the hotel tax. When I go, and I just got back from Bandon, and I paid a tax. Every place I go, there's a big tax added, and it's helping support their community. And I get to enjoy it while I'm there. And people, that's one place, but I think we should really focus on finding ways, ongoing funds. But for the one time, I really think that we have two big needs. And I know people are going to always say, if we have a shelter, you have to maintain it, support it. But that's ongoing funds. That's not a one-time, but building it could be a one-time thing. Thank you.
So I appreciate everything that everyone said tonight. I think it's going to be interesting to see what motions are brought and the revenue sources for them. I am a big proponent of the reserve, the $9.5 million reserve. I think it's essential and more like a minimum, not a maximum. I think I agree with Councilor Taylor. At City Hall, I think is really, really important. But to Sean's point, it does, and also to Councilor Pryor's point, it doesn't have to be a palatial mansion, and it could be something. I mean, simple elegance, if you will, right? And I realize that also comes at a cost. However, it's hard because the city, for me, it's like hard to talk about numbers when the city hall is like this moving target. And there's like, it'd be very helpful to me to understand the options that are on the table, just in general terms, the total cost for each of the options, and what the total budget of each of the options, to see really what we have and whether or not that $7 million has been suggested or proposed by the city manager to be fiscally prudent to reduce our interest costs, if that would be best used for that City Hall project, or if it immediately would be best used for ambulances or some other funding source. So that would be really helpful to me. The other issue with the City Hall that kind of burns on me is that, so now can you explain, so $500,000 last year for the downtown urban parks, that was one-time money? Mm-hmm. And then it's proposed another one-time money, all right? So that's using one-time money for ongoing project. Is that?
No, it's not ongoing projects necessarily. So, for example, this year that $500,000 has been spent or is being spent for increased programming in the downtown. We have a parks host in the parks blocks. We're paying it for additional police presence. Generally, that's overtime or rescheduling. Sure. There's all the power washing and those kinds of things.
All those things.
Yeah, so all that then is really one-time dollars that are being spent, and we're just proposing another round of those one-time dollars to continue those kinds of services in the downtown. When there's no money left in that, then those services wouldn't be provided, but they're not anticipated to be an ongoing expense right now.
Okay, so that project, which I think is just super, and I think it's like going to be the future of our community to get our downtown in order, which we've never been able to do as long as I've lived here, coupled with the City Hall, that to me is something that goes together, not that something that's apart. And so my point in saying this is some of these budget committees, or what do we do with this Comcast matter, kind of depends, in my view, on real numbers or real budgeted numbers. And so to me, I would be very interested to know what the parks renewal would be over the next, I don't know, maybe 2 budget cycles, what that would be to keep that good. So we're not just wasting money, putting it's nice now, but then next year it's just going to be the way it was again. That's wasting $1 million, right? So what are we going to do to keep that? And coupled with what are just some basic, I don't need a bunch of detail, but just basic proposed options for City Hall, so that we as the budget committee members can maybe reasonably consider if we should use some of that money and for what purpose.
Thanks. Question, Sue. The Comcast ongoing dollars, that's already programmed into the budget and is already included, and we still have future deficits, even with that ongoing money. So that's already been programmed into covering our costs. Yet we still have future deficits, and that $1 million each year. That's not cumulative. That's the amount each year that we.
An additional amount. So by the end of 3 years, you would have cut $3 million of ongoing costs.
Right. Okay. And maybe for some context for people that are watching on TV or other folks that are new to this process, what is the reserve for revenue shortfall, and why is it important to the city to have one?
Well, the reserve for revenue shortfall is a savings account, more or less, or a rainy day fund. Different people have different opinions about what you should call that, but it's basically the financial flexibility that we have to handle things that are not expected, or to help us bridge through tough times, which is part of what we're doing here with the $1 million of cuts over a 3-year period. I think John and Twyla talked about the fact that our financial situation is pretty dynamic. A lot of things are changing. In addition to getting $1 million more of Comcast revenues for FY18, we had $1.5 million less in property tax revenues. So, the numbers are always changing, and we're always trying to make sure that we're being prudent in managing our finances and looking forward over a long period of time. And the reserve for revenue shortfall helps us to do that. So if for instance, we didn't have a reserve for revenue shortfall and our property tax revenues came in $1.5 million short, we might be in a situation where we'd have to start cutting services pretty quickly. And the reserve for revenue shortfall helps us to be thoughtful when we are making those kinds of decisions. It also helps us when we get in a situation to not feel like, I think Josh talked about anticipated deficits out in FY22 and 23, which are certainly concerning, but we don't want to overcorrect today because an awful lot of things could happen between now and FY22. And so the reserve for revenue shortfall helps us to sort of offset some of the risk of what could happen next year.
And the 5% comes from where?
Well, we have a target of 8%. As you know, we've worked with that for quite a number, ever since John's been here. And I think,
a common thing for cities to target.
Yeah, between maybe 5 and 10% is kind of common. And I think the 5% we just viewed as a prudent minimum level. If you get below that, it just becomes harder to figure out how we will manage through the next several years. So,
can you distinguish the reserve for revenue shortfall from the UEFB, and what's that for?
Right. So the UEFB, the unappropriated ending fund balance, is it's like a cyclical cash flow reserve. So most of our revenues, the biggest chunk of our revenues come from property taxes, and you pay your property tax bill in November, right? Well, starting July 1st, the first day of our fiscal year, we have to pay our employees, and we have to pay, for various services that we buy from other folks, contractors, and that sort of thing. And so if we did not have the unappropriated ending fund balance, we wouldn't have enough money in our bank account to make those payments, pay our payroll from July until November. We would be in a negative cash position, and we'd have to borrow money in order to keep our business afloat.
And operating costs like gasoline for fire trucks.
Exactly.
Right. Okay, thanks for those distinctions. I think it's very important that we maintain the reserve for revenue shortfall as well as the UEFB, and at an adequate level. I think 5% is kind of a minimum for us to get there, but it's important to have those adequate reserves. So I'm very much in support of that. I do like the mantra of one-time money for one-time things, and not using it for ongoing things. And that's partially why we are not in financial straits right now. It's because we've stuck to that. As to the city hall, I think it's very important that we actually have a city hall. And we are going to build a city hall. And some of you may think differently, but the decision to build a city hall is not a budget committee question. city council question. The question for the budget committee, I believe, is should we borrow for that or and therefore incur debt, or use one-time monies to not incur debt? And to the extent that we can use one-time money to lower the debt that we would incur, I think we should do that to the maximum extent that we can. Having said that, the Comcast settlement is not an either-or question. It's not City Hall versus something else. We have and can use some of that Comcast settlement for projects and build a City Hall. The two things are not mutually exclusive. So with that in mind, foretell a motion that I'm crafting, which would use some of the Comcast settlement for about $1 million for homeless shelters to be spent within the next 2 years, doing more of the things that we're already doing, Opportunity Village, rest stops, and looking at some new things like low barrier shelters and day centers. The exact wording of that I'm still working on, but that's giving you a heads up. That's one of the things I'm going to propose.
Thank you. Garrett, are you on the phone? Yeah. I too agree the 9.5 million should be kept in the reserve revenue shortfall as a minimum, not a maximum. The tension that Josh was describing, when you look at the future budget and you see that deficit there, and what we do today could impact our ability to react later. Balancing that out with all the public comments that we've heard, thank you for those. I've heard a number of those over the last year in the different committees, the city council meetings, the newspaper. So I look forward to our conversations on how we balance this and how we look to the future as well. So we'll begin our queue now, and I think we have Councilor Clark first.
Thank you, sir. I know, Mr. Manager, that there is a system by which you account for how you pay for space costs within the city, and everybody pays somehow in some way, and I already know that part. My question is different than that. My question is, how much does the city of Eugene as an organization in the 18 budget pay to other organizations of any kind to rent space for city, predominantly office use in Eugene? More or less, round number.
We have that on a spreadsheet. We're happy to send that.
I have always heard 1.25. How close am I?
Could be. No, yeah, I don't know. Could be a little bit more or less. But it's, you're looking for, so for example, we rent space.
An ongoing expense.
We rent space from the county, for example. That would be one of those things that you're thinking about, which is different than we own this building and the people on the fourth floor pay a cost. I got it.
We have an ongoing cash flow out, an ongoing expense for space.
Yes.
Of about $1.25 million a year from here on out. We have the opportunity with this to do some smart things. I really appreciate a lot of what's been said both by the public and by my colleagues, and there are a lot of wise opportunities, I think, for the Comcast money. But I would like to suggest another couple. I think that purchasing the eWeb building for our city hall is something we can do for less than the money we have aside. We can take the balance of the money that we already have aside for updating it to significantly diminish, not entirely, but significantly diminish the ongoing expense that we put out every year for extra office space. So doing this is not only not needing to spend the Comcast money on City Hall, it's creating more ongoing money that may even solve the existing deficit or be available for some other use. Number two, I believe we should use some of this as seed money for intelligent investment. And by that I mean, we've done some smart things to install ultra high-speed fiber in our downtown core that have already begun to pay dividends. We have 26 new businesses within the last year that have have located in downtown Eugene in the core, largely as a result of, as a part of that, what we've done with this. I believe we should use some of this money, take the next step, and expand the footprint of ultra-high-speed fiber beyond just the downtown core to Midtown, to our schools. I don't know what that line is, because that would be measured by how much money and how far we can go. But that investment will return in increased property taxes from increased property value, larger revenue streams to the city over time, and I think it'll be a smarter use of that one-time money. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Fryer?
Thank you. A question. What is the overall city's expenditure per month? Salaries, operating, I mean, just kind of an idea. Is it about $5 million a month?
I don't know.
Well, if it's a $560 million budget.
Yeah, but that's
not
capital
really,
and,
yeah.
I mean, I thought we were saying that the reserve was to cover 2 months worth of operating expenses?
UEFB.
That's the UEFB.
Right.
Okay. Which is how much?
$25 million.
Okay, so if it's 2 months worth at $25 million, does that mean that the city expends about $12 million a month?
That's the general fund only.
General fund
General fund only, okay. And we'll stick to the general fund. So every month, the city spends about $12 million. Salaries, wages, operating costs.
You're just talking general fund, right?
Just talking general fund.
Operating costs.
Just the operating costs of the general fund, how many checks we write. So we spend about $12 million every month, and we don't necessarily get $12 million worth of revenue coming in every month. Some months you get property taxes, some months you don't get anything, but we still have to pay that $12 million every month. So we have a reserve, so for those months where we got to write $12 million worth of checks, but we don't have the revenue coming in, you cover the gap, and then when the revenue does come in, you fill that sucker back up again. Because when I used to run a business, that's exactly what I used that reserve for. Keep the cash flow even. And that's why at $9.5 million, that's an adequate amount to ensure that in a month where you just don't have anything coming in, you can still cover the $12 million gap that month.
Well, there are two things. One is the reserve for revenue shortfall.
Right.
The other is the unappropriated ending fund balance.
So that was what I was getting at. It's not only this fund, it's this fund plus the $25 million in the UEFB. Right. So between the two, that's where you make sure you've got your cash flow covered and you can make things work out. So this $9.5 million, you also have to look in the context of also the UEFB. So this is the ready reserve, the money you can get to immediately without having to go through some sort of a supplemental process.
You have to spend this on, if you want to spend this money, you have to go to supplemental budget, yes.
The $25 million or this money?
Well, we don't spend the $25 million, so.
That's what I was saying.
We can't appropriate.
It's unappropriated.
Under budget law, we can't appropriate.
Right.
We can use it as a cash flow device. That's actually the purpose of an unappropriated ending fund balance under state budget law.
So we wouldn't, if this was at $9.5 million and we had a bad month, we wouldn't somehow go out of business, have to declare bankruptcy.
Right.
We'd be okay.
Yeah, I don't think the $9.5 million doesn't really have, is different than that, right?
Yeah.
So I think of it as your family budget. If you're budgeting $1,000 a month for your regular expenses and you have nothing in your savings account, all of a sudden your transmission goes out and now you need to spend another $40, you don't have it in your savings account, and so now you got to do something. You got to not eat that month or borrow it.
Right.
If you have a savings account or a reserve for revenue shortfall, when your transmission goes out, you actually have that $40 available to replace your transmission without now having to not eat that month.
Yeah.
So the reserve for revenue shortfall allows you to deal with that unanticipated expense above and beyond what you budgeted for, because you actually have a savings account to be able to do that.
And it's not necessarily a cash flow issue, it's an actual unanticipated.
Yeah, and so it can be in a given year, or it can be, we know that transmission is going to go out next year, so we've saved money to pay for that transmission next year because we know that transmission maybe is PERS. Now we think about PERS. So we've saving money to be able to help pay for that PERS. So now our home budget isn't going like this all the time.
Exactly. It's a good example, and that's what I wanted to clarify was we have a variety of different sources we use to ensure we're not operating irresponsibly, that this works well. What I'm also hearing in terms of what to do, how to be thoughtful with the money is the reserve, which I've heard a lot of folks around the table say is something we want to ensure is there. I've heard shelter, which I'm glad we're having that conversation because several months ago I said I wanted to use this forum as a way to talk about a way to fund a shelter, and I'm glad we're having that conversation. I think it's a very important one to have. City Hall in one form or another, because that has been the council discussion. And one thing I have to really admire about my colleague, Councilor Clark, is he never gives up. This has been decided at the city council level. For now. We will build, for now, that we will build City Hall at the north end of the Butterfly Lot. We voted on it, so it's an actual passage. But I will admire, as I said, he won't give up. He'll keep trying. But at this point, money will be spent on one or money will be spent on the other. So we can have that conversation there, but it's not a conversation to have here. So don't get triangulated into it. That'll be a conversation in a different place. And then other one-time uses that we might want to talk about in this forum beyond the ones I just mentioned.
Councilor Zelenko.
I too admire your persistence, Mike. Never, ever, ever give up. It always reminds me of that, you know, that the frog that's being squeezed
You bet, brother.
by the guy who's about to eat him. But to be clear, the eWeb option was the most expensive option, substantially more than every other option that we looked at, and the council rejected it for that reason. And that's why we're where we are with the Butterfly Lot, with the backup going back to City Hall if we can't come to an agreement with the swap with the county. There are other costs that get that lower that cost, like the swap of land is not exactly equal, so that lowers, that'll probably go in the city's favor. And there's other costs that potentially get paid for by the county by us doing a favor by moving off the City Hall block and then putting the courthouse there. As to the rent question, the rent does indeed get saved if you move people into the City Hall, but there are other costs that get incurred when that happens. It's not just a pure savings. There's other costs. And the real question is, what's the net? And so if you forego people renting space and put them into a new City Hall or a new space, then you have to talk about the debt service associated with that new space and the ongoing cost of doing the heating and the lights and all the other kind of stuff. So you don't just save $1.2 million if you move people. It's a net cost, and it's substantially lower than that. And we looked at that when we asked that question when we were going through the City Hall, and it wasn't a very significant number that was saved by doing that.
We'll send that information back out. I don't know either the net cost or the gross cost on that. So we'll
yeah, it was
send
a
that out.
substantial amount of work that was done that maybe the Budget Committee would be good for them to review.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you. I just want to point out, I'm not talking about City Hall for part of the reason that I think Alan just implicitly referred to. There was an excellent work session where you all did consider in detail the broader space implications. It's weird to consider City Hall in isolation. For people who are interested in that, I don't know if anyone remembers the date offhand. It was a few months ago.
December 24th, or 14th.
That's right. But Mike was still thinking about it on December 24th. 14th. But as he is today. So but I encourage people to look at that December work session because I feel like staff did a good job wrestling with something very difficult, which is looking at that question of City Hall, not in isolation, but in the context of all of our space needs. I just want to say, and maybe this didn't come through clear enough, and maybe this is more for our viewing audience than for those around the table, but I think we should reject all parallels between the UEFB, which is very much just about fluctuations of things coming in and fluctuations of things going out, and as was pointed out, we don't appropriate, versus the reserve for revenue shortfall. I think the city manager's parallel was a good one. But I guess, Councilor Pryor, I'm not contradicting you, but I just want to say we don't have multiple mechanisms serving the same purpose. Those are completely different purposes. And the way I would encourage people, I won't use metaphors like savings account because I do think they are fraught, but I would encourage people to think about the reserve for revenue shortfall not just in the context of one-time money or ongoing money, and not as a savings account or rainy day fund, but as the thing we can draw on when we have to make a transition to a different kind of budget. When we go through difficult situations where we have to change the composition of what we're spending because we've had changes in the composition or level of our revenue. And so when you heard my question, which is largely unanswered, I will point out, by staff about, and maybe it's just because it's a tough one, about how we are supposed to think about today's question in the context of these looming PERS budgets. I understand Sue's point, which I think is an important one. You can't oversave today and starve yourself for something that might happen 10 years from now. I get that. But some of this stuff is pretty close, and we don't have a lot of money in the reserve for revenue shortfall compared to that amount of time and the magnitude of budget we're talking about. The general fund, by the way, which people, I think around the table should know, $207.9 million in the fiscal year proposed. I will just show to people, I don't know how well this is going to show up, but if you go to the Eugene website, if you go to the Budget Committee website, there's a budget snapshot that staff have put together with a great infographic with some details on that.
So I think the transition is a good one, and so I think the way that we think about it is the current budget strategy, that 3-year strategy, $1 million a year, at least 5%, I think sets us up well to go to that next potential big hit, right? Because the hits that really impact us, at least that we know so far, are PERS. I mean, we've gone through the PERS conversation, so we all know how that's going to impact us. And so I think what we're trying to do is set us up for that next round if it shows up, and that's why I think this strategy helps us get there.
Well, and just I appreciate that, John, but just a quick clarifying question. In the infographic that I referred to, that I encourage people to look at on the budget website, it's called a snapshot. If we look at what happens to the reserve for revenue shortfall, then by the time we get to the end of those years of budget cutting, you're right, we're still just above water, but then we subsequently go into deficit immediately.
Right.
So I understand you're saying it's setting us up well, but...
So I think what happens is every year as we come back, that's refreshed with the new information, and so what we would anticipate is next year in this conversation, that graph's going to look a little bit different, right? And so then we can, if that graph kind of goes like this even more dramatically, then we start thinking about how we're going to make those changes, again, sort of in this rolling 2 or 3 years, as opposed to doing it all at 1 year. And so if we kept all of that that $7 million in the reserves and didn't spend any of it, from a purely fiscal standpoint, that's the best way to try to cover that into the future. The challenge, though, is as all of you articulated, there are other needs that are imminent, or that really we want to try to balance against just purely fiscal, and that's why we're trying to balance that needs for services and the fiscal responsibility.
Thank you. Jill?
My question's been answered. Thank you.
Well, then again, I'll try to make this very brief. I guess that's clear. I mean, what you've said is clear, but it's quite opaque from the standpoint of budget documents. And just as Mike has a mantra, I too have one, and that is that it is impossible for us to sift through the various items in the unfunded needs assessment and other potential expenditures and understand how we could make investments that reap rewards. I completely agree with Mike's point about investments in downtown fiber. Difficult to quantify exactly how that's going to play out, though we've made the investment because we know it's the direction we should go, and surely it will pay off in property taxes and other things. But we have a lot of just straightforward capital expenses in the unfunded needs assessment. And as I look to structural deficits beyond fiscal year 21, it's really hard for us to know what one-time purposes could we apply this one-time money toward and know, oh, we'll be knocking $25,000 a year off our expenses or $100,000 a year off our expenses. I think unless we go that direction, we're always going to be having this conversation the way you've laid it out, John, which is that we're going to do the best we can. We're setting up this plan for $1 million in the next year, $2 million after that, $3 million after that, and then we'll see where we are a few years.
Yeah, point well taken. I think when we were back in the 2010, 2011, 2009 budgets, in fact, if you were to go back and take a look at some of those specific items, in fact, there were numbers of items that did just that. And those were articulated in this group about we would pay off this, or we would go make a facilities change, I think at one of the pools even. We invested in the pools, which saved an ongoing X amount in energy. And so, in fact, that was part of the strategies we went through that recession. So your point's well taken.
If we were so smart back then, why are we not doing that still?
I would say we still are. Probably what we need to do is articulate it differently. That makes more sense. So here, point well taken.
Thank you.
Councilor Supplemental.
I am a little confused about this $1 million less every year. So that means that next year's budget will have to be $1 million less than this one. But isn't our property tax going to be going up because housing values are going up and inflation and everything?
Right.
So what, are we really going to have $1 million less every year?
Right. So there are, I mean, Twyla went through, there are a lot of
going up faster.
In the PERS.
Variables, right? So we've got revenues going up at a particular rate, and our expenditures are going up actually faster than our revenues are going up. And so that's what we're trying to close, is that difference.
So the budget won't physically be $1 million less.
Right.
It will be, the revenues will be essentially $1 million less than the expense. Not exactly, but. So that,
I forgot about things getting more expensive.
Yeah. We'd be in really good shape.
John would like to do that too, yeah.
We have no one else in the queue, so we'll move to a break. Let's be back here at 7:05.
That's interesting. Very interesting. It's fun. City Hall. Yeah, it's going to be good.
Yeah, but I was like, oh.
We're going to continue with our agenda items, moving into the ambulance capacity presentations from our fire chief.
I have a new idea. Very excited.
Good evening, councilors, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about ambulance service deployment this evening. Very excited about sharing information with you and fielding some of the questions you might have. To start out, this is a slide of Riverbend Hospital.
Sorry, I thought I had that off.
Medic units in this region transport a majority of the calls for service to Riverbend. Approximately 60% of all medical transports in the Eugene-Springfield metro area go to Riverbend. It's a very busy place. This is not a difficult slide to get. This is unusual with the wide range of apparatus that are there, but many times in a given day, our response reliability within the city of Eugene is reduced due to the fact that our crews are responding from Riverbend Hospital. Our system is under enough stress that usually the medics have about 10 minutes to transfer their patients, get their paperwork done, and they'll get another response to get back into service. This move to Riverbend in 2008 has significantly contributed to the time it takes to get a medic unit back to quarters. We want our medic units back in quarters. You want the medic unit coming to your community to come from the closest station, and that helps response reliability, which helps patient outcomes. It's not uncommon to be out of medic units by 9 or 10 a.m. in the morning. Matter of fact, each morning. We usually have an engine company staff a paramedic unit. We ask the non-emergency contractor, Metro West, to add additional response units, or we utilize mutual aid agreements with neighboring response agencies to cover the calls for service. I just want to point out, this is not uncommon. This is almost a daily occurrence. Next slide. Our medical transport system has been under continuous system review. In 2002, Phase 1 EMS redesign was the result of a change in how the federal government paid their calls for service. In 2010 and 2012, we had an ambulance transport summit and task force. Councilor Clark participated in there. And just real quickly, you see Chief Murphy, Chief Talon, Chief Groves, and myself, 3.5 generations of fire chiefs have been working on this problem for about 15 years. And I'd just like to pause just for a second. And over here is Councilor Andre Ortiz, who contributed to that and got us through the recession with a plan that got us to where we are sustainable today. And so maybe just pause just for a second to think about the contributions, the positive contributions that Councilor Ortiz participated while she was with us. In 2012, we had non-emergency transport contract with a provider that allowed interfacility transports to assist us with the volume. And then we rolled into 2013 when the Affordable Care Act drastically changed how we were called for responses for service. In a nutshell, the Affordable Care Act has allowed many of our community members to have access to insurance, but do not always have the primary care providers that allow them to be seen in a timely manner. Many times the 911 system becomes their medical care unit. The average payment for a transport today is $536 after write-downs and write-offs are considered. In FY17, Eugene billed for $23.4 million in work and collected only $6.5 million at a collection rate of only 28%. In 2005, we collected 52% of gross revenue for a total of just under $5 million. If you think about the changes that have gone on for the last 12 years in cost of fuel and labor and all the things that go into an emergency response system, it's significant the amount of reduction that we've experienced. It has been 7 years since the first ambulance transport summit, and we have continued to find a path to sustainability. This year, we have an additional basic life support unit deploying in July, and we will kick off a ride source and medical taxi program to get low acuity patients to their doctor's office, to urgent care, or in some cases to an emergency room for treatment on August 1st. This was almost 10 months of negotiations and meetings that allowed LTD through Ride Source and with Trillium, with the managers of all agencies that contribute to this, to get a plan that now we're working through dispatch. We'll provide the crew training, and on August 1st we'll have the ability to transport some of these low acuity calls where they really need to go, which is to their physician's medical group or to the urgent care that's covered by their medical insurance. Okay. Current EMS service issues. Currently, all fire engines and fire trucks have paramedics that begin patient evaluation and treatment upon arrival. They provide advanced life support treatment and can begin compressions for cardiac arrest patients as soon as they arrive. Metro-wide, we have 6 advanced life support paramedic transport units that provide care and transportation for critically ill and injured patients. Cahoots now has 24-hour coverage that responds to mental health responses, patients considering sobering services, and those in need of social service assistance. Metro West Ambulance, our non-emergency contractor, staffs from 2 to 5 units daily to cover non-emergency interfacility transports and also for service needs when our system is over capacity. Life Flight provides critical care treatment via air or ground if the weather is not suitable for flight. This is a compare and contrast of Seattle Fire Department, which is also known as Medic 1, and the Eugene Springfield Metro Department. The comparisons are, I would say, very legitimate due to the fact that if you look at the cardiac arrest survival rate, which is the second line, they're 51%. In Eugene and Springfield 3 years ago, before we started to use the practices by the Seattle Fire Department and Medic 1, our cardiac arrest survival rates were 12%, which was about 2% over the national standard. Today, by utilizing many of the practices they pioneered, our ventricular fibrillation walk out of the hospital survival rate this last month was rated 50%, which is a significant improvement in our ability to deliver service. Seattle Fire Department has a daytime population of 1.1 million and 550,000 at night. Eugene Springfield, the entire metro area and the contract areas and the areas we serve with ambulances, just under 280,000 population. Seattle has 7 advanced life support units. They're going on 19,000, almost 20,000 responses. Eugene Springfield has 6 ALS units. However, they're almost going on 30,000 responses. Seattle has 5 basic life support units for a wide range of work that goes on. Almost more than 50% of their work that goes on in the Seattle metro area between Medic 1, ALS, BLS, and contractor support. It's about 47% ALS, and the rest is basic life support or low acuity transfer. In Eugene Springfield, we have 2 12-hour basic life support units that are just under 6,000 responses. That is the direction that we're trying to consider for what we need to do to align our medical transportation system. FY18 considerations. Already in July of 2017, FY18 budget includes 1 peak BLS unit, 12-hour unit. It's revenue backed, and we have already done the hiring, and we will start the academy, and that will be deployed in the field as close to July 1 as we can. As we talked about in August of 2017, the ride source and medical taxi contracts will be activated, and we'll be able to consider alternate routes of transportation to the hospital for our lowest acuity calls. The one-time considerations for FY18, if asked, would be to increase the basic life support resources by adding another additional peak unit, a fourth 12-hour basic life support unit in September, and by utilizing the existing fleet and currently scheduled for surplus. That's about a $500,000 expense. Some of that could be covered by revenue, but we need time to evaluate and look at what the revenue that comes in, due to the fact that there is a limited amount of patients that are within the metro area. We don't think we can cover the entire deployment in this manner, revenue-based, but we intend to find out and report on that. What we'd like to consider from May 2017 to December of 2017 is a system redesign, and the timeline for that would be a data-driven deployment plan that will allow the service needs to be balanced with a sound financial planning model. It will take until late summer to refine the dispatch protocols to make the changes to the computer-aided dispatch system to allow for a BLS response unit to take and respond to the appropriate requests for service. One additional benefit of this system redesign work is the potential to reduce fire engine responses to the lowest acuity calls. This change could reduce the number of calls for service that an engine crew now responds to, and this could have a positive impact on reducing our greenhouse gas emissions in accordance with our council goals to help address climate change. In spring 2018, we hope to have a plan, the system redesign, completed, and this plan, once completed, can be presented at a council work session. This allows the council to consider FY19 budget options and will provide a 6-year forecast for the new ambulance transport system going into the future. In closing, I am confident that this plan going into 2018 will balance customer service and employee satisfaction with the critical elements of financial stewardship that are all critical to making this program a success. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go around the table again. This time we'll start on the left-hand side with Councilor Zelenka.
I don't have any comments at this point.
So, Chief, so you're wanting one, if you could have, what you were requesting would be one BLS unit added in this budget cycle?
That's correct. The addition there is one coming in July that's already accounted for, revenue backed out of the ambulance transport fund budget. The ask was for a additional basic life support unit deployed in September to pick up the basic life support calls. The interest is to shift about 13,000 of those advanced life support calls now that are going to the ALS units to a BLS model.
Great, thank you.
Pass.
Chief, thank you very much. How would you say that the Eugene-Springfield merge has gone? Has there been cost savings or service improvements as a result?
I would say there's tremendous cost savings. The deployment in the field, the operational deployment in the field, I would say is seamless. It is very efficient, very effective. The communities are very well served. We have saved 1.5 and now going into next fiscal year, $1.6 million a year for the last 10 years running. It has been very effective and very desirable for both communities to participate in this merged organization.
So that 1.6 million in savings, has that resulted in service enhancements, or is that just kind of maintaining what has been a steady funding source from the from City Council?
It has each of these reductions, 2 are from the Fire Marshal's office, Deputy Fire Marshals. The other 12 are from administrative staff that were either redundant, and right now we are running extremely lean on administrative staff, and we have a study out to evaluate how our administrative staff can be better aligned.
How has it been to negotiate dealing with 2 complete separate city councils, 2 separate human resources departments, a couple different budgets? How's that working out?
Yes, that has been a tremendous amount of workload for the administration team that is responsible for those responsibilities. However, I would say the value to the community was the elimination of reducing a company in Eugene and potentially reducing a company in Springfield. And when you look at the service to the community, we think it's been worth the cost of the trouble that it's been to do some of these multiple tracks of administrative work.
It seems great. Is there any way to make improvements going forward in efficiency or service if you did a different governance model, a special district or a commission or something along those lines?
Yes, that has been questions that have been asked, and there are other models that represent that. However, there are some challenges with each of those governance models, and I like to say I have a governance model now that I'm comfortable working in, but when directed, we could consider a commission as probably the next first step, sort of metropolitan wastewater-like, but we haven't talked about things past considering the governance model we presently have.
Would that increase service capacity or efficiency or in some way, you know, help improve the system with a minimal financial input?
It could help streamline some of the administrative pieces of this business. I do not think you could make the field response more efficient or effective at this time. So it's a matter of streamlining the business side of this, but I would say that the work in the field is presently very efficient.
And John, a quick question for you. Is there a problem on the city side of why not to go to that model?
Which model?
Commission or, you know.
Commission or district?
District.
Yeah. I think it would have to be thought about pretty carefully. There's some financial implications, both internally but to the public as far as the cost to them. I have been in places where district models have worked very well. Commission models work well. Our current model worked very well as well. And so I think it would take a pretty extensive study to kind of work through all of that.
Sure. Chief, back to you. So you mentioned there needs to be some improvements in the dispatch. The dispatch center, the system you're using, the computer. Is the current system, or do you need additional services or funding to be able to accommodate accurately a BLS deployment model? I'm not sure what the accuracy of correctly dispatching is running, but
yes,
my understanding is it's not spectacular.
Yeah, the best way I could describe that is we asked the 911 center to set up the dispatch protocols to address all advanced life support calls with very little basic life support influence. There are models across the United States, including Seattle and some in Salt Lake City, Utah, that allow an expanded basic life support protocol. It takes time, maybe a few months to 100 days, to get those protocols switched from advanced life support to basic life support, because it's just analyst time that has to restructure the way the dispatch system works, and they have to do it while the dispatch system is live and operating every single day. They have a system that then imports the changes, so they're not working on a live system. However, it has to be perfect before it goes live, because the difference between an advanced life support or a basic life support or a ride source is critical for somebody that needs immediate care, and we never want to make a mistake in triaging how this call should be dispatched.
Oh, absolutely. And I guess my question is what sort of accuracy are we hitting right now from comes in to what actually they show up to?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question, because we have set up the system to always go advanced life support, so we always over triage. So we're in the high 90th percentile of over triaging. Once we refine the system and we get it split more 50-50, similar to the Seattle model, we'll be able to say what is advanced life support and what is basic life support. But right now, it's a one-size-fits-all, basically, with some exceptions.
Is the infrastructure, the software, whatever is that currently in place to be similar to the Seattle model, or is this going to take a complete overhaul?
No,
of the dispatch center.
No, The software is capable of doing it. It has just been programmed in one capacity and has to be reprogrammed to another capacity. We have a software that we have not missed a single call for emergency service since we've received it. So it does work effectively to get us to our calls. It's just, it takes a lot of staff time to get those changes made in the system.
Does the request that you have for one additional BOS account for the needs for that staffing or that switching of the system, or is that additional?
We originally had a request that had some analyst time that could assist with that work. After checking with the 911 supervisor team, it was determined that the staff that have access to that database, which is mission critical, is so limited that it is not something that just by applying more resources to, we can fix it. It has to be dealt with very delicately over time, so it's more of a time issue than a resource issue at this time. But we did check on that, and if it was a matter of resources, we would have had that as part of the request.
Okay. And then one last thing, moving forward beyond this current cycle, are you requesting one additional on top of the one that we have, BLS? Any thoughts for next year?
Our thoughts for next year is looking from expanding the 12-hour units to maybe 18 or eventually 24-hour units so that we can cover the calls for service with the appropriate apparatus for what the medical needs are for those patients. The interest is, if we're going to have 10 units at the hospital, we would prefer to have 2 or 3 of them advanced life support, 2 or 3 of them basic life support, and maybe some out-of-area units there, and get as many of our home units back to their station so that response reliability is optimized so crews are responding from the station closest to the call for service.
Super, thank you.
All right, thank you. Thanks for the great presentation. I really appreciate it. Just as a note, I just want to applaud the work on those the rates of people not dying as a result of that. And I just know that compression CPR is something now that's also being taught in the community broadly, and people should learn that. I guess what I want to say, just to be really explicit, this is tricky because we are talking about human life, and the basic expectations, reasonable expectations of our residents and our taxpayers. And yet at the same time, we have to talk about money. So I'm just going to give you and other staff license to chip in where we can draw a distinction between achieving a certain set of outcomes versus sort of the most cost-effective way to do that. It sure seems to me, just looking at this, that we seem to be falling short both on the outcomes and also on the cost effectiveness. And I just want to make sure I understand that. So I appreciate the juxtaposition with Seattle. It looks like, I mean, if what you're saying is that things are working well with that composition of advanced life support and basic life support ambulances, that we are quite far from that ratio with Seattle, right?
That's correct.
So I think, I guess I would just like to understand, I mean, if why we aren't headed in that way, why wouldn't we be headed in that direction? Is there some other reason that we would continue to have this richer mix of ALS ambulances over BLS ambulances, or is it just the way we've done it in the past?
It's the way we've done it in the past, and an advanced life support ambulance always has more capacity than a basic life support ambulance and can do more. We're not arguing, I wouldn't want to argue that, because there's a huge difference in their ability to provide the patient packaging and the rescuing that's required, and that's why we have firefighter paramedics on those advanced life support units. The interest is, with the Affordable Care Act creating such a high number of calls that may not be advanced life support in nature, we want to make sure we have basic life support units transporting the basic life support calls, preserving the advanced life supports for cardiac arrest, severe motor vehicle accidents, sepsis, stroke, cardiac events, things that require the dynamic treatment and care that's involved in advanced life support transport. And so it's just a matter of how the composition of the calls has changed over the last few years. Well, we want to try to match the resources available with the composition of calls that are coming in. Although you can cover any call with an advanced life support unit, it is a high level of training that requires to operate the 12-lead EKG and all the equipment. It is almost overdone to put somebody in a position to transport somebody, say with an infected toenail, to the hospital in an ambulance, which we get requests for that on occasion, with an advanced life support unit. We want to keep the right resource available for the right need within the community. We think it's fiscally responsible and the appropriate way to dispatch our resources.
So Josh, it feels like part of your question is if you were to, if the Eugene Springfield metro area mirrored the Seattle Fire Department, you would actually reduce our ALSs and as a part of increasing the BLS. I think that's what the data would show, because they have 7 units for a million folks or 500,000 folks, however you want to take a look at that. We have 6 units for less than half of those number of people. And so,
well, though that's tricky, right? Because I mean, the data I've seen is that Springfield's ambulances are spending 31% of their time in Eugene, and Eugene's ambulances are spending only 7% of their time in Springfield. So we really have, I did the math, we really have 3.72 ambulances dedicated to Eugene and just 2.28 to Springfield. So there's something weird going on already that I think makes it tough.
But part of the being a consolidated area is we're a consolidated area, right? So Seattle's area is broader than our area. So you have to, I think you have to take a look at metro. We're not suggesting we reduce the number of ALSs, right?
Sure, I guess I understand that, but the reason I make that point is that because the ALS ambulances are needed for certain things and then are stretched thin and are making these long drives, that having more ambulances seems necessary. At least that's how I'm understanding it from the number of calls per ambulance. I guess maybe the best way for me to re-ask this is to get to the next question I had, which is really that we have numbers here, but it doesn't seem like we actually have the right performance metrics, something like amount of time on average to get to a call, especially for one that demands an ALS ambulance. So it's, I mean, it's harder to see.
Yes, the Lane County Health Division to the Health Advisory Committee establishes those standards. We meet and exceed those standards for arrival on the scene due to the fact that we have a paramedic on every engine and truck company, and the present wording in that agreement is that the clock stops when we get a paramedic to the side of the patient and we start patient care. Then we have 10 minutes to get an ambulance there and start the transport. It is, I would, the consideration for how many ALS and BLS units I think is best considered over the next 5 to 7 months while we look at the data and do a deep dive into what actual calls are we going on, how many calls for service do we actually do ALS versus BLS, but I don't believe the recommendation is ever going to say we go below the ALS units that we presently have deployed.
Okay, that's helpful. And then I guess a quick follow-up question, a quick comment. I guess it'd be helpful. It says on one of the slides that we have 2 BLS units. I can't quite figure out on the subsequent slide whether we're asking for 3 or 4. So just sort of clarify for all of us what the request is. And last, I just want to point out to everyone, if you look in Appendix D of the proposed budget, there's already $250,000 for one-time money for additional BLS service. So I just want to make sure I'm right that we're already part way toward whatever an additional funding request would be, right?
That's correct. The $250,000 that's already in the budget is going to fund the basic life support unit that will go active July 1st. The request is for the September BLS unit that we would like to add, which will give us the 4th peak activity or 12-hour unit. In the future, as we analyze the data, we would like to expand those hours to optimize the response so that we can protect the community at the best value and at the times we need to have those units on the street.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Clark.
Thank you. Chief, thank you for the presentation very much, and I appreciate you mentioning the chance I had to serve on the Ambulance Transport Joint Task Force. The biggest thing I learned in that process is just exactly how little I know and how complicated this system is to try and administer. Because what you talked about was the service delivery here predominantly, but what you didn't talk about is the method by which the city gets paid and pays for that process, which is the overly complicated part. And sometimes, for the sake of my colleagues, that drives decisions about this mix, because some things are paid for when the ambulance shows up, and some things are paid for when the ambulance delivers somebody. And so the manner in which something gets paid for doesn't always, in my opinion, and I suppose I need to say, this was 5 years ago that I served, so many things have changed since then. But that was one of the things I took away, was that the manner in which the federal government, and sometimes the state government, reimbursed didn't always lead to the best possible not policy, but procedure, recommendations, because we were having to follow somebody else's rules in order to pay for it to some degree. That said, in that process, Chief Murphy used to say something that I always thought was really smart. And it's along the lines of noting that between World War II and the Korean conflict, one of the greatest changes in percentages saving human lives was the presence of MASH units. And that concept might be something to apply here. Now, I like that idea that you get the highest trained, smartest, best people with the capacity to save lives on scene as quickly as possible, however that happens. Help me understand. It seems like what we're doing is dispatching the manner in which someone is then transported from the 911 center, rather than allowing someone on scene who has stabilized someone to make the determination about how they are transferred. Is that correct?
There's a measure of accuracy to that statement. I would say we do not have enough basic life support capacity to make a wide variation of how the patient gets transported. We usually, the engine company arrives on scene, they do an advanced life support assessment. They determine whether it's advanced or basic life support with only 2 peak activity units in the system. A majority of the time, it defers to an advanced life support transport just due to the fact that there are no other units available.
But importantly, that assessment's made on scene?
That is correct.
I understand and appreciate the BLS model that you're looking for here. I think that if there are issues of reimbursement inequality that occur by giving the most authority to the guys doing the job on the street to make the call about how somebody goes, if that causes conflict with the amount of money coming in, that's a general fund thing that we step up to the plate and cover from my perspective, because we want the right thing done. Can you, with my last few seconds, can you tell me the wisdom of adding BLS rather than ALS? Because one of them seems to me like we're going to add this cycle.
Yes. The wisdom of BLS is that for over 50% of the calls that we go on, we believe the appropriate level of transport is basic life support. With the paramedics on every engine and truck company, in the event that that patient exceeds the basic life support needs for service, we can put a paramedic from that engine or truck onto that basic life support unit, automatically upgrading it to an advanced life support unit, expanding our capacity significantly when we have maximum need within the system. So we think it adds value having the same training and the same equipment and the same crews that know each other going from basic life support to advanced life support seamlessly. So in the event that you have multiple patients, or you have a patient that happens routinely where the ambulance, the advanced life support is coming from Riverbend, we can use the basic life support unit on scene, upgrade it to an advanced life support, and then get the patient to the hospital with the appropriate care.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for your presentation. A couple of questions. On the unfunded needs assessment number 52 regarding basic life support system, it calls for much higher funds, 1.25 million in ongoing costs and 750,000 in limited duration costs. Can you explain the difference between what you've requested and what is on that UNA?
Memory serving me, I believe that the request is for 24-hour units that allows a more matured version of this system to be put into place almost immediately. We believe that there's a potential to get there. What I do not want to do at this time is assume that we have all the answers of what needs to be deployed in the field or what strategies we might utilize going into 2018. We want to consider what a sustainable model is so that 2 or 3 years from now, we do not have a crisis like we had in 1981, where the private provider went bankrupt and with 8 hours notice was out of business because they could no longer perform that function. That's how we got into the transport business. So we're very sensitive to the fact that we need to remain solvent while we're delivering the service. The thought is that this warm-up, it gives us time to get the data so that if in the event that we had a plan that went to a council work session, we could share the long-term financial impact of that with the council and then with the budget committee at a future date, allowing for a deep dive on what the system might look like to 2021 and beyond.
Okay, thanks. And then this might be a question for you or maybe for staff. So just for clarification, we got some detail on capital outlay for the year, and about $9 million is going towards motorized vehicle modifications. Is any part of that associated with ambulance maintenance or ambulance costs, or is that a completely separate line item?
We'll have to get back to you on that.
Okay, thanks.
I'm not sure, but part of the request was to take vehicles that are scheduled for surplus that we are going to take out of service and keep the stretchers and the patient loading units, the radios, and the computer terminals on them, which usually we would transfer to the next unit that's coming into the service. So that was part of the request, and that is a need. If we're going to expand the service to basic life support, we will need the ability to load patients into these units that would be scheduled to be decommissioned. So that was, I'm not sure that speaks directly to your question, but part of the request was to make sure that our surplus units are ready to transport patients.
Yeah, I think most of that expense is in the Public Works budget, and I just don't know how that's accounted for, if Public Works is part of maintaining the ambulance fleet or if it's a separate budget.
They do our maintenance, but I'm not sure how it ties into that.
Okay.
The difference between a basic and advanced, is that in who's on it or the vehicle?
Both. The vehicle, I would say the vehicles are very similar. A basic life support unit can have a paramedic on it. It can have a basic. They sign a waiver to function only at the lowest level that the protocol allows, due to we work under a medical director's orders on how we can contribute to a patient's well-being in the field. So to put it simply, the units are very similar. The staffing is different. There can be paramedics on a basic life support unit, but they do not function at the paramedic level.
Until they need to? I mean, I'm a little confused because it sounds like, well, if we have this basic ambulance there and it needs to be advanced, the paramedic on the engine will get in the basic ambulance and make it into advanced?
That's correct.
Okay, so do we want to buy a new basic ambulance and then another one, or are we just outfitting our surplus ones?
Today, I would like to consider outfitting the surplus units to evaluate our costs in the event that we are going to pursue a fully matured basic life support system. I believe we can consider alternate vehicle types that are less expensive but are just as heavy duty, due to the fact that our dual role firefighter paramedics need extra cabinet room to take their turnout and bunker gear and have some extra rescue equipment they need to transport in the event that they go to a fire, because they perform both purposes. They move hose and throw ladders at a fire, and they have to have all their equipment with them, including their self-contained breathing apparatus. That would not be required on a basic life support unit that we bought from a specification just for that purpose.
So if we have more basic ambulances, that will allow the advanced ones to stay in the neighborhoods more often, because we'll send the basic ones for the toe that's infected and save the advanced one for the heart attack when we can.
That's absolutely the intention. And as the system fully matures with enough basic life support units to pick up those 13,000 calls that we think should really be responded to with a basic life support unit, the advanced life support units will be responding from their home station at a much higher rate instead of from Riverbend or from McKinsey-Willamette.
So Labor has talked about wanting an advanced life support ambulance, and you're asking for 2 basic, and from what is happening in Seattle, that sort of makes sense to me. So I'm wondering why Labor is asking for the advanced.
Labor's request is a legitimate request. They know that when you add a advanced life support unit with dual role firefighter paramedics, it increases your fire protection and fire response for every incident that they go to that requires them to act. Similar to our ambulances being at Riverbend, that means our firefighters are also at Riverbend.
Oh, okay.
And so I'm not, my concern is I believe I can get those firefighters back into the station where they can respond to fires and advanced life units with the BLS unit deployed on the street. Very similar goals in mind.
So the BLS unit doesn't have like firefighting trained firefighters? They're paramedics only?
That's correct. They are EMTs or paramedics. They are not cross-trained as firefighters. With that being said, as an apprentice staff unit, many of those crew members that start on that unit migrate through the academy and become firefighter paramedics within the near future. And we think it's a very good recruitment tool that is going to serve us well to get the young people in this community through LCC and onto the job as a firefighter paramedic.
I really like your planning and the thoughts of trying it out and seeing how it goes. But then I come back to, we have Comcast money, and we have 2021 coming, and we have Vision Zero. So if we get to 2 basics and we try it out, and then we're going to eventually need to get more for 2021 and all these people coming, yet we have the potential to buy a basic and an advanced, or now because of our extra money, and this is such a vital thing to save our lives, and so that's my question. We kind of have 2 different asks, and I understand them, and we have some money. So how are we going to buy the ambulances in the future?
I think there's a couple pieces there. I mean, ultimately, it's what's the right mix of ALS to BLS. I mean, that's really, you're trying to match the right piece of equipment and the people to the right job, right? That's how you get maximum efficiency. And so I think what the chief is working towards is, let's take the right time to make sure we do that. We do know we need more ambulance capacity. Nobody's arguing with that. It's sort of what's the right mix. And so we can start down that road with adding BLS units, which now transfer some of those lower calls to BLS, and so that it's much more efficient. I think the part of the challenge, with adding just ALS, and you can correct, is, I mean, it's more expensive to put an ALS. I don't think it's the actual physical equipment that's the problem. It's the personnel cost, right? And that's always the problem. Problem's the wrong word. That's always the high cost, right? That's always the cost. And so it's and so if we're able to meet the need with the BLS staffing, and it doesn't require the ALS staffing, you're actually meeting the need at a lower cost. And so I think it's, rather than just immediately adding ALS ambulances at a higher cost, we know we need the BLS, let's add some of that capacity, and then based on the study, then we'll know what the right mix is. And so as we move into next year's budget, we'll actually have the data that says, here's what we're trying to achieve, here's what it takes to do that, and now figure out how to fund that. It's an ongoing cost. It's just a lot more cost for it.
So the basic difference is labor cost. How much does an ambulance cost, and how many surplus ambulances do we have?
Surplus is a interesting term. We have reserve apparatus. A new ambulance is in the $200,000 to $250,000 range, fully equipped, ready to go to work.
And that's basic or advanced?
That's advanced.
Okay.
And the second question, I'm sorry.
How many did we
Oh,
have
surplus.
that could move into that role, and how many would we be buying, and what does it cost?
Thank you. We just received 3 new ambulances, and so those would be surplus because we sell the units as they come out of the system. And so rather than sell those, we would take 3 of those units and outfit them for patient transport, which gives us the capacity to have reserve ambulances. They can get the oil changed. These are very busy units. They fill up the gas tank twice a day, going back a fuel tank between Riverbend and here, and they get an oil change about every month. So we have to have extra units to get into fleet so we can keep those very well maintained. We do exceptional preventative maintenance, but we have to have a lot of units to cycle in to get that preventative maintenance done without losing a minute of service out in the field.
And so when you say you're getting 2 new basic, or 1 new basic and hopefully 2, is that extras that we already have, or are we going to get a new one?
We have new units that have already been delivered that are preparing to go into service that we're trying to time with this so that we can preserve, instead of putting them on the surplus and selling them, we can put them into service as basic life support units.
They need some additional equipment on them to make them continue to function, which is what part of this money would go towards, right? So you can...
I just want to make sure that we're taking care of our emergency needs, and that if, we needed $500,000 of ambulances, 2 new ambulances, this would be the time to do it. That's my concern.
But I think what the chief is talking about here is this $500,000 buys the equipment that you're talking about out. It provides 2 new ambulances into the fleet that are ready to go and ready to operate.
So then as we get more people, we should get the money to hire more paramedics.
Yes, that is the interest.
I think I finally get it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you go back 3 slides?
I can.
I want to get to the one that compares, see that one. If I follow the logic, and I really appreciate the questions that have been asked because it really helps a lot in defining the difference between a BLS and an ALS. In addition to some equipment, part of it is also the ability to accommodate turnouts and breathing apparatus for a firefighter.
That's correct.
Do the current BLS units that we have and the ones we're thinking about putting into service, would they be able to relatively easily add that capability to them, or would it require a major restructuring to do that?
No, they are units that have been used with the breathing apparatus and the turnout gear in them. We just remove that equipment from the units.
But you could put it back in.
That is correct.
So these units that we have, we could convert them to an ALS unit by adding the turnouts and the appropriate firefighter.
That's correct.
Okay, so that gives us flexibility. They could be converted. My understanding also by looking at this is we wouldn't change the 6 units. We would add 2 more units under BLS, and part of your logic for doing that is some of those 29,966 should appropriately be down in the BLS category.
That is correct.
But you don't know for sure exactly how many would come down because you haven't done the study yet.
That's correct. We have numbers that tell us we believe it's in excess of 10,000 calls for service that could be BLS units, but we want to have actuals, a summer of running the responses that we can bring real data that says, here's what we found to be the need that for ALS and BLS. Some of this information we collect routinely, some we do not collect routinely, but we will need this information to make good business decisions on how we go into the future.
So if the Budget Committee were to approve the request that's being made tonight, at the end of the summer, after you've had a chance to review the data, if you said, you know what, these aren't ingrown toenails, these are heart attacks, we really need to make these ALS units, you could add a firefighter paramedic, turnouts, and convert those units to ALS after the summer's over?
That is correct, with enough resources.
And maybe that's a supplemental budget, or maybe that's some additional allocation, but you're banking on 29,966 responses not all being heart attacks or life-threatening situations.
That's correct.
And if you compared it to the Seattle figures, where their 20,000 for a city the size of Seattle, that's an indicator to you that probably a lot of those 29,000 calls aren't life-threatening calls, but you just don't know how many.
We believe that, but looking at the ratios, we believe if it's 47% in Seattle, even if we round it up and said it's 50% in Eugene and Springfield, that's where we get the 10 to 13,000 calls that we think are now being responded to with an ALS that could be serviced by a BLS unit.
So we could go along with your recommendation for this budget based on the logic you think this follows, and then at the end of the summer say, you know, we've analyzed the responses we've made and we realize that 4 BLS units and 6 ALS units isn't covering the demand as we've now studied it. We could make a shift with adding some additional resources.
Yes, we could.
Okay, thank you.
The only thing I would say is it won't be right at the end of the summer. What we've suggested is we'll go through the end of the calendar year, back to council with all that data, and then it flows into that next round of budget. So it's,
based on what we learned, we could make the adjustment.
It's what you said, it's just a timing.
Yeah, okay.
Pass.
Thank you. The surplus ambulances, their usable lifespan for our purposes, that will be sold and probably used by someone else, right?
That's correct.
So the maintenance issues, I know go to another department, but in terms of reliability, do you have any concerns there, or what would be the remaining useful life that you see for a surplus ambulance? When would you want that to be replaced?
Yes, I believe that we can get a year or two out of these surplus units due to the fact they will not be responding code 3 as a rule. Occasionally, when they have to be moved up from a basic life support to an advanced life support unit, they could return to the hospital code 3, which would be a relatively rare event. Rather than going on 20 or more code 3 calls a day, they would be going on code 1 calls. Our units are very well maintained, and we believe that we can get 1 to 2 years while we evaluate what the best vehicle is for this particular fleet, should we choose to expand and mature the BLS service delivery model to complement the ALS model presently in service.
Okay. And then our ambulance population, what does that encompass?
That encompasses in the cities of Eugene and Springfield, the contract areas adjacent but outside of Eugene and Springfield, and some rural and almost wilderness areas that extend almost to Deschutes County, I believe. It goes almost past the hot springs. And so we respond as a unit up the McKenzie Highway. We also can respond north and south on I-5 to the county borders, and we do automatic and mutual aid almost to the tunnel in going to Florence, as well as we've gone to South Lane to stand by on occasion in Cottage Grove.
So that doesn't encompass, we're very fortunate as a city to have the games and the Olympic trials and football games. How does that impact the ambulance service profile and your timeliness there?
On a football game day, we use almost all of our units. Every unit we have in the system, reserve and otherwise, are staffed and positioned so that we can assist with the crowd that's there. This is why we need to have a couple of surplus units if they're going to be staffed, so we can make sure we meet the needs during large track meet events, football events, and U of O graduation events, and things that require us to upstaff to make sure we can cover those special events.
And those type of events are covered with overtime now?
They are. We have rare occasions where they're covered on duty, but usually it's a special assignment that's covered by overtime.
And paid for by you.
Paid for by they're contracted with the individual that requests the service. That's correct.
We have, we'll go into our queue now with our first round. We have John.
Thank you for the clarifying. Now, just so I understand, based on these numbers, this is just what Eugene Springfield Fire is running. That does not include the calls that are being provided by Metro West. Is that correct?
That is correct. These are just Eugene Springfield Fire responses.
What you indicated? It's daily that they're upgrading and backfilling in for vacancies. What would you say would be the approximate number of calls that Metro West is providing that a Eugene Springfield ALS unit would take if it was available.
I understand Metro West because they have a different dispatch system. I cannot track call for call, but I do get an annual report. I'll be able to provide that information. There are over 5,000 calls for service Metro West takes, and especially in the summer when we go through ambulances, when people are very active, we can have a call or two a day that Metro West assists us with. It's not unusual to have them pick up 1 or 2 calls a day, so for the entire summer.
A little bit more accurate would be another 5,000 calls to the BLS number.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
I do really appreciate you reminding us what happened in '81. Are you supportive of Eugene Springfield maintaining that BLS service and kind of bringing that back into the fold, or are you looking at continuing on with Metro West?
I believe having a contractor is similar to what Seattle has, and I believe the highly trained advanced life support should be focused on those responses. The basic life support that's complementary of that should be in support of those highly trained advanced life support units, and I believe there's a body of work that can be considered for contracting. In the event that the data that we find says that we should be doing all of these responses, the ambulance service area at this time supports that, and we could consider that as one of the options. It is from a cost-benefit analysis, we believe that that is a tremendous lift for our organization to get the staffing upstaffed and to get 2 to 5 more units on the street to cover that band of work. We think it's good to have a contractor in the area to pick up the lowest acuity calls and give us some more capacity in the event that we're over capacity.
And in that aspect, I don't disagree. However, you were talking about the ability for an engine company personnel to hop on and upgrade to an ALS unit. That these units, if our need studies show, that we can, take it out of surplus, or we can, we can kind of change the model. That's very limiting by having the Metro West as part of that equation. Am I incorrect?
That is correct. There are areas that have a little more advanced public-private partnerships. We feel our relationship in the present configuration is working fairly well. We have a very good relationship with our vendor, and we feel like we will have the good data to analyze what our next step should be based upon does the work generate the revenue that we need to cover that system.
And John, back to the previous thing I was asking about, so talking about going to a commission or a special district model, it seems logically to me anyway, and please correct me if I'm wrong, having Chief Zulidik having to do multiple budgets and multiple HR and all this other stuff is cumbersome and inefficient and not being fiscally, responsible. Why haven't we gone to that model? And what would it take in order to move that forward? Are we talking funding a feasibility study? What are we looking at?
Ultimately, council has to say we want to go in that direction. I think, so for me, administratively, that's just one piece of the conversation. I think there's a much broader conversation about districts that needs to be had. Part of it's a governance issue. Part of it's an openness issue. Generally, districts are considered much more opaque, to use your word, than general government. So that needs to be taken into account. I think there's financial considerations that the council would need to talk about with respect to property tax rates and compressions and levies. And so there's a broad swath of conversation that needs to occur in that. And I think it's a conversation that if the council chooses to have as far as wanting to pursue that, I think it's a huge, significant, a huge policy conversation for the council to say, we want to explore that, and therefore we're willing to devote the resources to it. So I do think it would be in the council's purview to say, yes, we want to consider that, and under that, we would go do the work or not, depending on the council direction.
Okay, but from a budget committee standpoint, the resources necessary for that feasibility study would be coming from this body, not the council, correct?
Ultimately, the council has to appropriate the dollars. I think if this budget committee recommended that money be set aside for that study, I would not spend that money and contract for it until the council has a policy conversation around it.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Zelenka.
Yeah, I'm not as enamored with the special district. It
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily equate to me that you get lower costs by a special district. In fact, the opposite seems to be the true, because you need to duplicate all the administrative and financial and all the procurement and all those other things that occur at a city level that would then need to be absolutely recreated in a special district. So I don't think you end up having a big savings associated with that. And there are a lot of equity and policy concerns I would be concerned about having that view in a special district. Back to that slide there, if I got this right, 75% of the calls in Seattle are BLS. And on that side, it's 15% are BLS. If you add in the 5,000 that John was talking about, it's still only 25%. There's still 3 to 4 or 5 times more BLS calls in Seattle than here. And you went into why that's so and with a bunch of different answers. The bottom line is, regardless, this budget adds more capacity to the it's already baked into the budget is 1 BLS. Does that include the FTE associated with that?
It does. It's revenue backed, so we believe we can cover it with revenue that we can generate by putting that unit in service.
And the additional request would be add another BLS. Just the equipment and the FTE?
Equipment and the FTE, I would consider it a bridge, because our initial numbers, without doing further analysis, show us we can fund maybe 1.7 of the 12-hour units. So we think we're close, but this would give us a bridge to get into 2018 and then get actuals to share with the council.
If you could go to 2 more slides forward, system redesign timeline, that one. So over the next 6 months or so, 7 months, you would do your analysis and study this issue and have a plan by the end of the year.
That's correct.
And so what you're looking at is getting the data, and maybe you can help me clarify, what are the questions that you would ask that you would want to get answered by this study? Like, for instance, like, do you want to know more clearly what the number of BLS calls actually are, and I don't even know what refined dispatch protocols means. But.
Yeah, I can. That's exactly right. We would like to truth what we think are the BLS calls. We think there are 10,000 of them. By doing that careful analysis, we can truth that. Refining the dispatch protocols means we do not send an advanced life support to every call and then consider whether it's basic life support. We use internationally recognized standards to send basic life support units with an engine company to a predominantly basic life support call, and the advanced life support to the advanced life support calls. What we understand is there will be times when the wrong unit gets dispatched. In the event that we over triage, it's pretty easy. The advanced life support can take a basic life support call without too much trouble. And if it's the other way around, we'll be able to document that we mis-triaged, and there's determinant codes that we can then refine to make sure we either don't repeat that again, or if we see a trend that we are continuously under-triaging critical calls for service, we take those out of the BLS calls for service and we convert them to ALS, so we make sure that our community is comfortable with the numbers that, say, Seattle is. But each community's a little different. Mm-hmm.
And so why not just have everything be ALS?
That would be an ideal solution, and that would help us with fire response. I'd say the interest there would be, same reason Seattle does not, is there is an exceptional cost that goes with that, and it might be cost prohibitive for a community to serve that. In retrospect to how Seattle covers that, they have a 33.5 cent per thousand levy called Medic One that covers entire King County, and that's how they're able to float that operation that includes that band of private contractors. In the event that Lane County decided to have a modest or even much less than that, even half of that, ambulance service levy that covered from the coast to Oak Ridge, we might be able to float the metro area much better because of the density of population and meet all the needs that we would have, including ALS and BLS units on the street.
That would have to be done at the county.
That's correct. It had to be a county-led levy, yes.
And you have a sense of the increase in cost going from BLS to ALS? Is it twice as expensive, or?
I would say I'm comfortable saying it's twice as expensive. It might be more, but in retrospect, they're worth it. There is nothing that they really can't respond to, and if somebody is in a ditch, in the water, in a tree, on a roof, in a burning building, they can take care of everything. And so it really is a good use of resources to have the cross-trained firefighter paramedics, but they are an exceptional resource that we want to use for those exceptional situations.
Compliment you, Chief. You know your stuff.
Thank you, sir.
And okay, I think I'm done with that. So that at the end of this study, by the end of the year, you will know what the number of BLS calls really is, more or less. You'll be able to refine the dispatch protocols to assign them correctly and get the best mix of ALS, BLS, so that we're cost effective in the services that are absolutely necessary in life savings.
Yes.
And the number that we actually need. Maybe it ends up being, instead of 6 and 4, it's 6 and 5 or 7.
Correct.
3 or 4, whatever. So that's the end goal of the study.
Correct. And the end goal ultimately is to get those advanced life support units out of the hospital as soon as possible, back to their home station, so they're close to the neighborhoods that they serve, so we do not have a delay in the response for service when needed.
Councilor Clark.
Thanks, sir. I think it's important for us to review for half a second the fact that what our rules and actual language of those rules are. The Budget Committee's job is to make a recommendation to Council about what budget to approve. The Council's job is to approve and authorize the budget and hand it to the manager and say, here it is. But I think it's important to note that what we're handing him when the Council approves the budget is the authority to spend up to what that dollar amount is. He still has some discretion about what he spends and how he spends through his department heads, but our job is to give him the public authority to spend that money. And so what we're having here is a discussion about when to spend how much and for what, just subtly, and it's a little too much policy for my comfort taste from the council position about how to do that. So I want to empower you to do the right thing without over prescribing what it is that we should be doing. But I also want to err on the side of caution, and here are a couple of thoughts for that. In other words, I think the study absolutely is a wonderful idea. It needs to be done. It'll help us determine what the right mix is, and everything that you said, I'm right on the money. But I would rather err on the side of having too many ambulances between now and then than too few. And there are another couple of thoughts that are important. What did you say a little bit ago? It was really important to me about service level when there's a duck game. How many more ambulances are in service and how many more people, roughly?
It usually is approximately 40,000 more people in the community. We put 4 to 6 ambulances into service, additional ambulances into service, whether they're in the stations or they're surrounding Autzen Stadium. So it is a significant amount of resources that we put into service to make sure we provide service.
Right.
Yes.
So I think for perspective, it's important for all of us to note the following things. That we know that this is 278,000 people that this covers, which is more than the 160,000 in Eugene. We're talking about Eugene, Springfield, and some surrounding areas. We know that in the next 17 years, just in Eugene, we're going to have duck level population in the city. We're going to have another 40,000 people in Eugene, minimum, in the next 17 years. And for the whole service area, it's likely to be closer to a duck game and a half, maybe 2 days. So our long-term thinking needs to be, how do we get from this day to that day and that service level? And I would rather overestimate and begin to be prepared for that than not. And I would also say that council passed Vision Zero by a pretty strong margin, and I wonder what role that plays in the manager's thinking about the urgency of making sure the system is at its optimum.
Oh, was that I thought
It was kind of rhetorical, but I'd love to hear what you want to say.
I guess from when you talk about Vision Zero and this,
I know that's
I understand
engineering
your
and- yeah.
what the intersection you're trying to talk about on that.
It should go down.
If we, well, yeah, I understand your point, but, yeah.
Josh.
Great, thank you. I know we're running out of time. Try to be fast. First, savings. I'm just curious, and we're struggling with the comparison with Seattle, and I'm starting to no longer believe that that's actually a helpful comparison. The calls are way higher for our ambulances, especially if you correct for the fact that, actually, if you want to go back slide, to the fact that we have 12-hour rather than 24-hour BLS ambulances. I just want to ask, don't these levels of calls like contribute to, I mean, like sort of stress and ultimately turnover? I mean, like, isn't that an issue?
Absolutely, yes. And I will tell you that we have the hardest working firefighter paramedics in the state by far. It does contribute to turnover. It is a significant expense to recruit and train and then turn over employees. We believe this is the path that is going to align the appropriate resource to the appropriate calls for service and reduce that. But I can tell you, it is painful to see some of our best and brightest transitioning from the organization to other organizations, knowing that it is very difficult to do some of the staffing levels that are required here.
Yeah, okay, that's helpful. Obviously, those savings are going to be outside the kinds of views of the budget that we're looking at here, but turnover is expensive. As a former longtime business owner, I know that. So if there's a way for us to get a clearer view of that at some point, that would be helpful. I'm also curious if there are savings beyond the ambulance transport fund. I'm starting to realize that we've been looking at the expenditures there, but I mean, you painted a picture where this is integrated with other services. Are there savings outside that budget boundary? Does that make sense?
I believe there could be. In the event that we can reduce sending our largest apparatus to some of the responses that are very low acuity, we might be able to stretch that apparatus lifespan by a year or two. We might be able to reduce fuel usage by a couple thousand gallons a year. And so we're hoping that the actual funding of the basic life support system might be realized out of some of the savings that we might realize from not sending our largest and most highest staffed units to the lowest acuity calls on a routine basis.
Okay, that's helpful. And finally, back, I mean, I'm struggling. The exchange John and I had before about trying to understand the apples-to-apples comparison. So I just want to point out, and I realize this is a good faith effort to give us something to think with, but I'm starting to believe this is deeply problematic. You nicely but qualitatively laid out the other services that we have, like Cahoots and private ambulance contractors. We can't see that for Seattle. We don't know how it fits in. We had some guesses, but we don't know how that fits in with Seattle. Also, this is apples and oranges, right? The BLS units for Seattle are 24-hour units. The BLS unit here is a 12-hour. Presumably that's half as much service per unit.
That is correct.
Okay, so those numbers I think are sort of distorting our picture. I guess I go back to the fact that I'm trying to remember the cities. I think it was Corvallis, Bend, and Albany have the same number of ALS ambulances as we do, and they're all like half the size or less. Well, Bend's a little more than half, but you know what I mean? It's like it's way off. So I feel like if we're going to make this sort of high-level decision about how to allocate resources, we should have, I think, more apples-to-apples comparisons, and I feel like that information has been gathered, hasn't it? You guys have done sort of benchmarking with other cities, right?
We do for comparison, for contract work and studies along those lines. I will say that for preparing going into 2018, this entire study will be apples to apples, but it takes a tremendous amount of analyst time and some gifted analysts to make sure that we're laying out data that almost aligns identically with anybody we're comparing to, and that does take a lot of work.
Okay, that's helpful. And so final question, I guess, is here, I mean, we're talking about going from 2 12-hour BLS units to 4, right? So it's really apples to apples, 1 to 2. So then the ratio is still well shy of what Seattle has. It's like quite a distance from the mix of BLS ambulances that Seattle has. Can you prepare us for what that's going to look like in the future? And just, I guess, to Councilor Clark's point, should we be ramping up faster our BLS service?
I believe we will know that answer. Yes, we will need to ramp up, but I believe the spring of 2018, the opportunity to present this at a work session will give us a 6-year forecast financially and a potential long-term forecast on where our call volume is going with the increase in population. And we believe we can give, I believe it's going to look something like my thumbnail analysis is the 6 ALS units and 4 24-hour ALS units to stabilize the system, and then use data-driven analysis to see where the deployment should go from there.
But we won't have the money, say, for the second half of the fiscal year in order to do that.
That's yet to be determined. We do not know how much revenue we can produce by putting these units on the streets. In the event that we were able to cover both these units revenue backed, we would have the potential to have some resources available to look into the future.
Only 1 second left. I'm very careful. Okay, thank you. Leave it at that.
One word. I have a very quick, exciting capital outlay question. Is that, when we're looking at capital outlay in principle, is that a one-time expense or an ongoing expense or some weird hybrid?
It's the actual outlay to buy something is one time, to ongoing maintenance of it is a operational ongoing.
So when we look at 11.5 million from the general fund for that.
For capital outlay?
Yeah.
Yeah, so some of that would be, it could be facilities, could be, I don't know exactly, there's a list somewhere in the budget around that kind of stuff. And then but then there's an ongoing maintenance or operations cost that's built into the operations and maintenance side.
So that's not included in?
Not included in the
it's all
capital
one time?
side.
Okay.
Thank you. We're going to go into our second round. We only have time for one. John?
Real quick, hopefully, I agree completely with what Mike and Josh were alluding to. I question a little bit. So there is a certain amount of time necessary to ramp up. You're hoping for 1 or 2 more years out of these surplus ambulances. There's even if we were able to, council said today, do this, let's staff up 8 more FTEs right now. You're talking 6, 8, 12 months before you truly have these people on board, trained, and you're seeing this effect. From Mike's standpoint of not to micromanage you, whether you determine this should be a BLS or an ALS, or we need 2 of these and 1 of those, or 1 of those and 2 of these. Ultimately, you need the funding to purchase the apparatus and for the personnel. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Looking forward beyond just this next 6 months, yes, we need to know the information, but looking beyond that over the course of this fiscal year and, giving you some guidance over the next couple of years to know what to ramp up for, and that you'll have units on the road that the wheels aren't falling off of. You need some clarity from the budget committee to give you 1 thumbs up or 2 thumbs up. You need that clarity, correct?
What the budget committee can do is recommend how much money is appropriated into the fund. How those funds are specifically spent is a management prerogative.
Correct.
So part of that would be is if the budget committee and the council eventually say they want to appropriate another $10 million into the ambulance fund, they can do that. It will be the question will be is at what point do those get spent and on what? What we will do is complete the study before we go spend all those dollars.
I would hope so.
And so part of that will be is if and when do you want to appropriate those dollars for that versus something else? I mean, that's part of what I think this conversation is all about. And so if you want to appropriate X amount of money for that, then there's just less money to appropriate towards something else. So, I mean, that's, I think, the trade-off.
Sure.
Yeah.
However, I think that the sentiment of the last couple of meetings has been very positive towards, we recognize there's a problem. We need to allocate some more funding to fixing this problem. Precisely how it gets fixed is up to Chief Zoludik, but whether we take one of the UNA allocations or others and the BLS or the ALS or whatever, ultimately we need to give some more one-time expenses for the units and some more ongoing expenses for personnel.
Yeah, well, what I think what we're suggesting, yes, you can choose to do however you want to do that, but recommend, but what we're suggesting is yes, we all recognize there's not enough capacity. The reality is we don't know how those should be allocated between ALS and BLS and actually the Metro West. That we believe we have a fiscal responsibility to try to appropriate each dollar in the most efficient way possible, and so that gets at the distribution. And that for an interim piece, if it's important to sort of up that ante now, that's why we would say the $500,000 ups the ante, actually has the opportunity to add additional capacity now before we know all the answers, because we do know there's going to be additional capacity. And so that's what we would suggest, and then we're comfortable moving forward with that. The council ultimately, after a recommendation of the budget committee, can choose to do whatever they want to do on that.
And I'm just looking to kind of reiterate what I said last week was, I think we have for a long time been kind of neglecting the core essential services, and it would behoove us to refocus some of that effort and energy.
I would say absolutely they need more capacity, as does the police, as does parks maintenance, as does facilities. So yes, all those capacities in City Hall and shelters, and so I think that's the interesting conversation that comes out of all of this.
Stop paying rent. So sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. We do have more time after the May 10th presentation to talk about all of the issues here that we've talked about over the last few nights. May 8th, Monday, May 8th at noon, if you could have your proposed motions sent to Twyla Miller. She will consolidate those, and that'll allow me and her to talk about the agenda and how we will prioritize our motions for a vote on for the following meeting, May 24th. I will send out an email shortly after Monday evening, sometime in that time frame, to talk about the priority and how we'll carry those motions. And then you will also get a copy of all the motions from Twyla Monday evening. That'll give you a day and a half to ask questions from your budget buddies, city staff, about how to tweak your motions or for additional clarification. Yes.
Monday.
I just don't see how we can do all that in one meeting. There's so many motions and topics, and we've spent all this time learning about the budget and the things we want to do. Can we really appropriately, studiously, carefully talk about these things in a meeting and a half? I feel like that's not giving it enough due, but I haven't done it before.
I think historically we find the time towards the end that it does come together pretty quickly. I'll tell you that I think there's about 4 categories of motions and many motions within those categories that will probably be meshed together. So we'll know more on Monday, and then you'll have that information Monday evening. So we'll proceed from there.
And a day and a half to think about it and ask questions.
Yeah, that's...
So I should block that out right now, and my budget buddies.
And if people need help crafting motions, let us know. We can also help with that too, if that's important.
Which we have 5 days to do, right? Like Kitty said.
We work fast.
For 2 weeks.
Yeah, but so we'll help with any of that also if people need that.
Thank you. With that, we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.